let's go, let's go, let's go. How's everybody doing? Hopefully, everybody is doing well. All right. Prayerfully, everybody can see and hear all right. I think so. I think it's so. All right. Looks like we're going on all platforms. Let's get started. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Aman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste, wasai Nikitawaya, Ohio. I see you, Manut, Wagwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Ensemble, Privet, Abaragani, Akwaba, Madase, Etese. Jambu, Mimini Kofi, Nidafara Kukutana Noewe, Boker To, Boker Tav, greetings, grand rising, salutations, Bakwarta, Barakalat Shem Yahava, Anaai, Kwafa'ai, Chelet at Servants of Christ, Mashalach. Shalom, everybody, peace. Barak at Shalom to you. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate your presence one more again. Thank you for joining us as we get ready to get into the word of Yahweh Elohim. As you guys are getting on, we are continuing our Revelation series. Once again, all praises unto Him, all praises unto Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, to the moderators, ministers, SOC, Lottie Dottie, and everybody. We are thankful and grateful this year. Hashtag We Be the Nation, right? And we're transitioning from the Gregorian calendar, January 1st, as we normally do. What we do is we go from there and we start getting ready for our actual new year. For us, that'll be March 18th. And that's when we will celebrate the actual new year biblically for us as a nation. And so we are excited. And so this year we have several things that have already been outlined for us throughout the year to be able to make sure we go through in our pretty much daily teaching, in our daily lives, as we thrive to come together and really come together as a nation, as a unit. So we are excited about what Yah has for us. We're excited about Passover coming up. Please don't forget, Passover is coming up April 1st. And if you're meeting with us in Tennessee, we need to know more information. If you're in the Florida region, going to stay down there, we need to make sure that you guys know more about what's going on. We're praying for everybody, and we're thankful and grateful. Thank you to the ministerial staff for coming over from prayer. So forgive us for being a little bit late. But we're thankful and grateful for another opportunity to be with you one more again. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to get started. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. Announcements pretty much. After this is family day for me. So outside of a couple things here or there, I will be incognito. But that being said, prayerfully you all are doing well and enjoy your families, enjoy your time. And remind yourself, even those, there's been quite a few persons kind of back to back. You probably even more recently, but had some passings, some persons who have passed away recently in the SOC family. So, even if it's taking time to remember the great times and the things that came together and the things that, you didn't think that you'd be able to do, or that smile that so-and-so left you, those things that you had growing up with your friends, those of you who lost friends, or even, parents, grandparents, whatever we've gone, we all go through some of these things, and we're mourning with you, right, so to speak, using that word, mourning with you, or really, mourning, I guess you say, with you, but we are making it a point to know that, when Yahweh is still there and He's still in our hearts, and, it's time for us to build upon legacies. So that's what we're going to do as a nation, and we're going to make all of them proud. That's something that I keep in my heart, with those I've lost. Even with my mom passing years and years and years ago, I try to keep that in my heart. And I know it's not the same. Right? I hate when people try to be like, I know what you're going through. I don't know what you were going through. Right? That being said, one thing I hold in my heart still, it hurts, 20 plus years now, not having your mom, but I recall her smile, I recall her warmth. Sometimes I can't even recall her voice anymore, which I struggle with, but knowing that she's there, knowing she put this word in me and she left a legacy. And so it's my responsibility to make sure that I live every day inside of what she left. So that's what we're here to do. And we honor her. We honor your peoples. We honor your family. We honor those who have left a lasting mark in your heart. And let's get it. and make them proud. All right. So we're going to go to Revelation chapter 3 today. We're going to start at verse 1. We're going to get into the assembly of Sardis. Once again, we're going to Chazan Gaimon at Alav, or Revelation chapter 3 and verse 1. Once you have it, say Aman, Amen, Amin. I got it. I'm with you. I'm listening. And while you're doing it, if you can rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, or however you were able to reverence the word of Yah, we thank you for doing so in advance. And while you're doing that, let's get ready to say shalom and peace to everybody real quick, right? And then we shall get started. Once again, thank you for joining us on any platform you're joining us on, whether it's your first time, last time, long time, one of many, whatever the case is. We thank you. If you agree with us, disagree with us, we still all give all honor and praise to Yahweh Elohim, who is over everything. Amen. So if you can, once again, if you're able to rise to your feet. Amen. Okay, just getting my notes up and ready. This should I already had up. Right, we ready? We're pretty much ready to go. Alrighty. Everybody ready? We're gonna get ready in a second. I'm sorry. And also too, if you can hear me, mic check 1 2. If you can hear me, 5 4 3 2 1. Mic check 1 2. Just let me know if you can hear me. How you doing, Minister Smail Larry? How you doing, Sister Allison? Herbie John, please forgive me. I still don't recall how to pronounce the name. How you doing, Sister Beck? Elder Anais, Sister Tamika, Sister Shirley. I'm sorry, I skipped somebody. I know I did. How you doing, Minister Castleberry? Sister Sheila, Sister Michelle, Sister Shirley, Brother Darius, Brother Richard, Arthur, Big Roy, Minister Stephen, Brother Rodney, Masati, Tony, Dr. Jamaica Does, Jason Cato, Joy Love, Larry, Meech, and anybody that I missed, turn it to my head, not to my heart. For those that are coming on later, we appreciate you as well. And if you're if you're not with us live, know that even if I'm not mentioning your name, it doesn't mean that we don't thank Yah on every side for your very presence and what you mean to the kingdom, and therefore what you mean to Yah, and what you mean to us. And if I might make it personal, what you even mean unto me. Because you are special in the eyes of Yah. And anything that is special in the eyes of Yah is special in my eyes as well. So much love and respect to everybody. We appreciate you. Come on in. We'll get ready to say our Bible pledge. Once again, if you're able to rise to your feet in reference to Yahweh's word, or however you're able to reference the word of Yah, we thank you for doing so in advance. We are going to get started. So you can just put your Bible, your right-handed device in the air, and get ready to repeat after me. All praises. All righty. This is my Bible. This is my sword. In this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahweh. Amen. With Yahweh's Shem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. We're going to read Revelation chapter 3, starting at verse 1. We're going to start there. Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. And it reads as follows. It says, and unto the angel of the assembly, or unto the messenger of the assembly in Sardis, or Sardis, right? These things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of Elohim, and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name and authority, that thou livest and art dead. Ooh. Be watchful, and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before Elohim. Wait a minute, are our works supposed to be perfect? I don't know. That's what the Bible says, right? Remember, therefore, how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. Thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in brightness, or in yeah, in brightness, for they are worthy. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in bright raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life. Ooh, we got it. That means we got to go back once again to Revelation 20. We're going to do it again, right? I shall not blot out his name of the scroll of the book of life. But I will confess, his name before my Father and before his angels. He that hath an ear, let him hear what Ravak Asad at Quadescham, or let he that hath an ear hear what Holy Spirit is saying to the assemblies. We've just read Revelation chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. May Yahweh barak those who readeth it, heareth it, and keepeth it. You may be seated in the most highest presence, or go back to what you were doing, and may you cherish this word as well. How you doing, Brother Cole? All righty, right? So we're going through today in these 7 assemblies we've been in, and really we're in the hashtag We Be the Nation Revelation series, if you will, starting off this year and looking at this as an assembly, as a nation. And this is a perfect place for us to go and start. I was, going back and forth. Should I go through Shemot, or what we call Exodus, and all this stuff last year, and praying and seeking, and Yahweh made it very clear. Even talked to Elder Maya about it. Should we do Exodus or Revelation? They both have their things about our nation. And Elder Maya even was like, hey, I'm hearing Revelation for this reason, that reason, etc. And it's been right on time. It has been right on time. It has been right on time, because we need to hear right? If we have ears to hear, those of us that are ready to hear this, those of us that are ready to hear past Fox News, CNN, CSNBC, right? We're ready to hear past NBC. We're ready to hear past ABC. We're ready to hear past, I don't even know how much the thing this is anymore, HBO, Max, whatever, all those on Showtime, if those things are still a thing. I don't even know, right? How you doing, Sister Jennifer? At least they're probably not what they used to be. How you doing, Empress? But we are in a time in eschatology, how you doing, TJ, where we have to recognize and realize with quickness and live with a certain type of sincerity, diligently hearing what Yah has to say to his people in this time. And in Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, and by the way, it's Sunday, so it's not necessarily our day of worship per se, right, where we set aside, but we go over a little longer on Sundays because we have a little more time. We don't have anything else for the day. So that being said, strap in, right? Put your seatbelts on. It's going to be a nice little ride. How you doing, bold servant? So we realize in the time that we're in the calling that we have, in the mindset that we live in, we recognize and realize that it is the last days, right? We've gone through, and we'll go through this eventually, Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, all that, right? But we're in the place to where it's open season, right, against those who believe. And we're supposed to be separate. If you don't get the reference, that's Revelation chapter 12, where Israel, a woman with a crown, 12 stars upon her head, right, representing the message that should be given to the 12 assemblies, right? And it should be the same message, by the way. It's not a different one. And this woman has the Messiah who's come out of her. She has separated herself. The Messiah has gone back to the right hand of the Father, right? Has now left to where the enemy has tried to come and look for us, who should be separate. We were not separate the way we were supposed to be, but when the enemy came for us, we began to separate and go into the wilderness, meaning that we went away from what persons say modern civilization should be, and we left. And the water that came out of the serpent's mouth, the serpent representing the devil, and the water representing his people, was spit out towards us, the clay. He is the potter, we are the clay. But we, as the clay, rose up, and with Yahweh's power and through his word and being separate from the world, we were able to hold back the water, the people who were with the Satan. So therefore now the Satan, in his anger and frustrated that he cannot get to us, he now turns his attention towards the remnant that's left over. And that's why in Revelation 13, it starts off with out of the people, or out of the water that was just couldn't get to us, right? The water, out of that water comes a second beast. Or I'm sorry, not a second beast, the first beast of Revelation 13. The first beast of Revelation 13 is the way you are governed. right? And the persons who are over you, right? And the second beast comes up to back them up is what we would call, religious leaders of the day. And so now we're in the situation to where we have a message that the seven assemblies, Revelation 2 and 3, are supposed to be receiving from the seven stars. And there's seven spirits that go out with these seven stars because each assembly located in one of these cities is dealing specifically with issues and spiritual influences that come against them from others, right? And so in these seven assemblies, and how you doing, Brother Darius, and everybody watching, and thank you, by the way. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification tab, let persons know we're on. We're in the season where they're trying to make sure that it's down or whatever, but I thank you guys for continuing to look for us and find us and continue to be the nation that we're building, right? So in all these things that are happening, now we're in a situation to where there needs to be a specific message, right? If you were to think about it, I know this doesn't, you could do this if you could think about a pie chart and think about these seven assemblies, right, being cut, right, in the pie. There's seven pieces of pie. There's one pie, one assembly, but there's seven places where we've been scattered to. Somebody's picked up seven slices, if you will, and put them in different places. And in these seven different places that these pies have been put, these pies are now influenced, or us as a people, scattered, have been influenced by different things. So we have to come back together as one. But in the meantime, as we're coming back together, we must recognize there are certain things we have picked up from where we've been scattered. And so we must have a mindset to make sure that we're aware of what's going on with these. So these assemblies that we're going to, Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, which we'll talk about today, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, are all assemblies that basically represent a microcosm. We're one. At the same time, though, the devil is coming against us as one, right? This is, not a stone has been left upon a stone has probably happened by this point, or is pretty close. Israelites are not really living in Israel at this point. So there are others who are being grafted in at this point, right? We're probably past the life of Paul. Paul has probably already lost his life. Peter has probably already lost his life. John is an old man. John was the young boy. He was the young buck out of the 12. 13 if you include Christ, right? So he was in their group he was a young one, right? He was a little boy, if you would, a teenager that was riding around with them and learning and growing and stuff like that. He was always like needing extra, he was always needing an extra hug. He was always needing somebody to help him. These were grown men with families and stuff, right? So John is now older, right? He's much older. He's an elder. He's close to the end of his life. And so in this time period, we are already at a place to where Israel is scattered. And we must recognize that while we were scattered, we picked up a whole bunch of foolishness. Right? And how you doing, MFY? Shalom to you, peace. How you doing, Jason? And everybody coming on any platform, we thank y'all for you. How you doing, Sister Judith? So we must recognize that as we were scattered, we picked up some really interesting things, right? And so with Ephesus, we lost our first love. We realized there's Artemis spirit and stuff like that. And persons there's emasculation that happens. You take out, the proper place of a husband. There's things that are going on with sexual perversion, right? There's things that are going on all over the place. But at least we had enough sense to stay away from the Nicolaitan doctrines, Nicolaitan deeds, right? We might have listened to some of the Nicolaitans stuff, but we did not start doing what they were doing. So at least that was something. How you doing, E.T.? At least that was something that we could look at. How you doing, Sister Monique? Right, then you get to the next one, Smyrna. Smyrna, a place to where they had literally been conquered so much that the persons even that originally lived in Smyrna didn't live there anymore. Their culture had been appropriated. Now things were being changed. And here we are going to live with them and starting to go to the same place where persons are starting to appropriate culture as well. And we had to realize that even though we've gone through and tribulation and all these things, guess what? Yahweh is still knowing our works and knowing our patience. He says that, hey, I also know you think you are poor, or you think of yourself as being in poverty, but really thou art rich. And a lot of times we forget because of the promise that's on our lives and the promise that we have as a nation and the word that we've been given by the Most High to help us to move forward. How you doing, Auntie Mary? We forget sometimes that we might feel like we're in poverty, or we may feel like nothing's going right, or we might feel like our families are doing whatever. But stop focusing on that, because if you know who you truly are, then really thou art rich. It does not mean we should not look at it, but do not focus on it to the point to where you've taken on the negative things right? And not take it on the positive. Well, go on, Andre, right? Do not look at it like you take on the negative things so much that you have forgotten about the positive, right? Also, too, right? As we keep on going, through this stuff, we get to Pergamos, who is the center of all these 7 cities. They used to be part of something called the Pergamine dynasty. And so in the Pergamine dynasty, in Pergamos, this is where you see them worshiping. And by the way, in Smyrna, they were worshiping Aphrodite and some other things, and Zeus and Dionysus and others. So these are things that are tied into the things that are traded. We talked about that yesterday, where trade is going on. And so these guilds, which now you might call corporations and things of that nature, these guilds are leading the conversation on worship or who we believe in. How you doing, Donna? Thanks for being on. Right? So now these guilds are the ones telling you, just like Christian nationalism has become a thing, because Christian nationalism is based upon making sure that Reagan gets what he needs, that Trump gets what he needs, that Bush gets what he needs. Oh, just in case you thought I had missed one, Clinton gets what he needs, and Carter gets what he needs, and Obama gets what he needs, and Biden gets what he needs. This is why Obama has to have persons praying around him the same way that Trump has to have persons praying around him. It's the same game, right? And so it's the guilds, it's the corporations, it's the lobbyists, it's the think tanks, if they don't want to be called lobbyists and go through certain legal red tape they have to go through. All these things belong to the same thing. These are guilds that are moving about. And so Pergamos being the center of the guild, right, or the center where the guilds meet, and the center of where all this trade is happening, in the center of this Pergamon dynasty, these 7 cities. Well, what's going on in Pergamos? In Pergamos, once again, as a reminder real quick, we have that Balaam doctrine that is specifically taught to persons who are of the guild, who are basically taught by preachers, right? The preachers are teaching them because they don't know the word themselves. So the preachers have to step in and say, hey, this is how you get the people. This is how you trick them. This is how you do this. This is how you do that, right? And so they say, okay, cool. And then the corporations, the guilds that come through, they say, all right, this is what we're going to do to be a stumbling stone of offense. Now, specifically with Balaam, it's talking about towards Yahadashah herself, Israel herself. How you doing, Sister Dabala? Right? It's talking about specifically towards Israel herself. Right? That's something we need to catch. Because all this doctrine out there, right? Nicolaitan doctrine, Balaam doctrine, is used to conquer lay folk, and you conquer them in this system. The system is built upon coming against the Negro or the Israelite. And so, guess what? You got to conquer. You got to make them have scorn. You have to fill them with contempt. You must be filled with contempt for them. That's Psalm 123, right? You have to give them Psalm 123 so they forget who they are in Psalm 122, where I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of Jehovah, right? Now may Israel say, we should do things within our gates. You have to attack the very foundation of who we are. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully everything went well with the service. I was just saying we've been having a lot of persons pass away, so we'll keep you in prayer too. We were lifting up some persons through a ministerial prayer today. I'm on. But see, we have all these different things that are going on, and we have to recognize that this is a concerted, a specific concerted, diligent attack, intentional attack towards us. It's not accidental. My brother, my sister, this is intentional. It is done with extreme intent, right? Where they're coming at you, right? So this comes from the Pergamos, the center of the world structure. Remember, this is the place where it says, I know that the Satan's seat is there. This is the central hub of the Satan. When you look at the center of the world, the center of the beast, the center of Washington, D.C., the center of London, you're going to find something, the center of Berlin, still to this day. We'll get into some of that again today. But at the center of Berlin, if you recall, even the stuff we were talking about with the place in the cities, or one of is it Smyrna, is it Pergamos? It might be Pergamos or Thyatira, I'm not sure. But where Zeus's temple used to be, the big huge slab, the altar that was to him, that's in Berlin now, as well as some of the other things we're going to talk about today that pop up. right? So we have to recognize what's going on here. Then after that, we talked about, and we talked about yesterday, Thyatira, where we focused on the guilds, and we talked about the same spirits that are being worshipped, and basically all of them, if you kind of go four for four, at this point, a version of Ishtar is being worshipped, which is what Jezebel worshipped. And Jezebel, one of the things we don't talk about her, is that she used witchcraft and used certain things spiritually, not just to control her husband, but she also did it to control business. She was taking person's business away from them. She was taking persons' farms. She was taking what caused them to be able to take care of their families away. I mean, I get what you're saying, Tomsky. How you doing? Yeah, we need to put something there, but really, we need to make sure we have something for ourselves. Ultimately, right? Is what the goal is, right? I get what you were saying. He was basically just saying. I think he was basically just saying that. We need to make sure if they're praying over there, we're praying over there as well, right? I think that's what he was saying, right? But 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 thank you, and I get why you did what you did. I trust you. I promise you. I'm thankful for you, right? So, in all the different things that we're speaking on, right, it brings us today to Sardis. So, as we've been doing with each of these cities that the assemblies are in, let's go ahead and learn a little bit about the background of Sardis. This stuff you can find on your Google machine if you just look up the history of Sardis or who did Sardis worship. I'm not even going to a place where it's like you got to get this book and get this book. This is stuff that you can look for your own study to show yourself approved. Right, a separate place or a safe place, even, right? All right. So Sardis, right, is in modern day Turkey. Once again, we're talking about the Ottoman Empire, which is Eastern Rome, right? Orthodox Christianity, mixing of iron and clay. And in this, we have so it boasts a rich history as the opulent capital of the Lydian kingdom. So if you've been with us for a little while, you comprehend the Lydians. The Lydians, even dealing with Greco-Roman stuff, but technically they even go back past that. Before they were known as being Greek in the minds of persons, these were actually like Hittites and Babylonian and Mesopotamian places, or at least they were affected by them. Right, Canaanites and persons have lived in these places as well. Right, so Sardis was an opulent, rich, vast, important, regal, etc. place. Now, here's some things that you may not know. Right, it is renowned for inventing coinage, which, by the way, everybody tries to say they invented coins. If you notice in this, we heard already that they said that coins were invented in Ephesus. Right, so this is really the Pergamine dynasty, but everybody tries to say that the first person to have coins. If you go back before this, though, right? If you go back before them, we have Carthaginian coins, right? So persons being like, oh, well, this is the first person to build coin. Maybe, probably not, right? But everybody wants to be the first. How you doing, Brother Jacob? Thanks for being on. I sent you a message. I don't know if you're available. I'd like to maybe a couple Tuesdays or something. If you're busier than I am at times, but if you're available, I was thinking maybe we can link up and try to do some kind of live together or something like that, and not just talk about it, but be about it this time. But appreciate all that you do, brother. Continue to do well. Please, of course, check out Jacob's Regeneration, Jacob's Link, all that stuff. We love you guys and over there, and thank you for your support. And really, we love you because you're part of the kingdom. You're part of us. How you doing, Mo Desire? So, so it was a very wealthy place, right? It was a very wealthy place. They got a lot of their wealth and a lot of their stuff too because they were based off of the river, right? Off of a river. Is it let me see, the Pactolus, Pactolus. So the Pactolus or the Pactolus River. So they had a lot of wealth and they had a lot of different things and persons came there. And so they, right, but eventually they will fall to Persia. So remember that list, right? So like I said, Babylonian, this is Daniel chapter 2, once again, Babylonian, then Persians, they would fall to, and eventually after the Persians, they would fall to the Greeks, right? And then eventually after the Greeks, they become Roman, and really they're a puppet state. So technically they're still Greek rulers on these thrones of these places, right? Or even over the Pergamine dynasty, but these persons got to check in with Rome. So Daniel chapter 2, what we've talked about before with that, where you have the gold, silver, bronze, iron, splits into two, right? And then mixed with iron and clay, all that stuff. This is something that's very important to keep in mind. So Revelation is more revealing, if you will, than what we had before. Then, right, Genesis 3 says some stuff. Isaiah tells us some things, but even before Isaiah, excuse me, Jeremiah talks about some things going on. Isaiah talks about some things going on. We have Christ coming in Matthew 24 and 25, telling us about certain things that must happen. So we have a continued conversation in this. So to get revelation, once again, when we talk about a holy Bible or anything holy, you must recognize that it's whole, right? And so we have a lot of parts and a lot of holes in there. How you doing, Sister Deborah? So we have to be careful that we are whole and get rid of the holes, right? And so in paving this patchy highway, right, we're starting to get some of this stuff back. Now, here's one of the things that persons don't recognize. If you listen to somebody talk about it today, they'll tell you that this was where the Christian church, even though the word church didn't exist at this time, but these are the early church. The reality, though, is that there were persons that were there that were Israelite, as we know here, right? This is the seven assemblies, and we just think, oh, the seven assemblies were non-Israelites. No. Israelites scattered, and they began to teach, and they were in charge of a lot of things, and they grabbed in persons who would come in and become Israel over time, right? So this is not, oh yeah, this is just Greeks, or this is just Ephesus. No. These are assemblies in. If you notice, every time we read about something, it says to the assembly in thus and such. It's not saying all of Ephesus, this is for you. Right? It's not saying all of Smyrna, this is for you. It's not saying, it is not saying, we do not see it say, hey, all of all of Pergamos, this is for you. We do not see it say all of Thyatira, this is for you. We do not see it say all of Sardis, this is for you. This is for the assembly that happens to be in Sardis and is dealing with the influences of Sardis. All right? You catch it? How you doing, Sister Carla? Right? So you catch that? And of course, we're lifting you up in prayer, of course. Right? No, you got some tough decisions to make. Am I? Right? So this is for the assemblies that are there. It's very important that we catch that, because if you're not careful, you'll do what everybody else says, right? Like everybody goes, the Bible is for everybody. No, it's not. Right? Not even Revelation is for everybody. Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 3 tell us specifically that this is Yahashua revelation given to him of Elohim. Yahashua, once given to him, gives it to the angel. The angel, the messenger, gives it to John. John gives it to the messengers who are supposed to give it to the seven assemblies, right? And it says that, so John did what he was supposed to do. He writes it out, and and it says that this, once again, is from John to the messengers, to the assemblies, and it is for those who will do what? Who will readeth it, heareth it, and keepeth it. So reading it is not just enough. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? I know you don't want to hear that, but reading it is not enough. And even hearing it, Shema, it's great that you hear it, but you should not be hearers and not doers as well. So reading it is great, but if you don't even know the context of it, how can you truly read it? And hearing it is great, but if you don't even believe what it's saying, then how can you truly hear it? But it's also for those that keepeth it, not just doeth it. Keepeth it is the word that they use there. This word meaning that they guard it. This is a guarded word, right? And this is not true. We shouldn't just let everybody into this word. Paul even says, if you come into this thing and you're new, I know, right? But we forget. Paul himself had to go through some things before he could start preaching too. And he was a Hebrew of the Hebrews. He was a Benjamite. He had all them boxes checked. But if you go back and you look at Paul, remember Paul was sitting there while Stephen was being stoned. Deacon Stephen. Right? While he was being stoned. Who we call Stephen. Right? Now, why was he being stoned? Anybody recall why Stephen was stoned? He was preaching the truth, and they didn't like it. But does anybody recall what doctrine, right? Or what part of doctrine? He was given doctrine. He was given instruction. He was given terach. He was talking about the scrolls. What was he preaching? We got to get context. What was Deacon Stephen preaching that was so against the word that they had to stone him. How you doing, Linda? Thanks for being on with us. And thank you guys for sharing the live. We appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, all that great stuff. What was it that Deacon Stephen was preaching that was so important that could mess up what they were doing as Israelites, at least Israelites in the flesh, but not Israel in the spirit at the same time? If you do not recall, he preached against Malachi, which is not our Malachi, but they called somebody Malak. You know it as, right? Now they were saying king, but the king they were talking about is the king where you get that red star from. You might not know it as the red star, right? But it's the Rothschild family, right? That symbol that you think is a biblical symbol, you call it the Star of David. There's no such thing as the Star of David. Oh my greatness. Oh my greatness. We about to hit something now. Because I know some cats still be wearing the flag and you can't wait to get your thing and be wearing the Star of David with your fringes, but there's no such thing as the Star of David. You've never seen it in your Bible, have you? Tell me the chapter and verse where it talks about the Star of David. You see? See? There are those that say they're you and not. We have a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge. Have you ever seen, can somebody show me the passage of scripture that talks about the Star of David? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That means that star is not biblical. It's not Israelite. Be careful, my brother. Be careful, my sister. You so Israel that you can't figure out what's anti-Christ. Right? The star that they have on there, that particular shape, is the Rothschild family crest. It was a star. Now look, this part is alleged. Right? None of us were really there. This is word of mouth. Some things though, where there's smoke, there's fire. But this part is alleged. Might I be fair? Might not be fair. This part, I will say allegedly. Right? We have a lot of evidence that points towards it more than likely being so. However, I have to say it is more than likely, therefore it's still alleged. Right? By the way, show up tomorrow evening. We're gonna have a time. I might have to come on early. We're gonna have a time. We might have to do 2-3 parts on it, but we're gonna have a time tomorrow evening on the live session. When persons say that stuff is not true and that nobody in the Bible is real and everything, we're gonna give you some places you can actually look up. We're gonna show some pictures and stuff tomorrow. Right? We're gonna have a time. I'm excited about that. But anyways, you said it's not in the load. You checked it. That's right. It's not in the inventory. You have to make sure it was wrapped up before it got on the truck. That's right. It's not on there, right? So we have no evidence of there ever being a Star of David. Now this is important. I need you to catch this because we're talking about Sardis today, and some of you know where we're going with the gymnasium thing a little bit, but we don't go a lot of bit into it today. Right? We're gonna go really deep into that, but don't miss this Star of David thing. See, because the Star of David is the Rothschild family's crest, and so allegedly, right? There was a door that Rothschild had. His name isn't even originally Rothschild, to be honest. I forget it at this time, but his name was not even Rothschild originally. Right? And so it was put on the door. It was put on the door, and it was actually in red. That's actually part of the definition of the Roths part of it. It's red. It's a red star. Right? That's actually the name, right? And so the star was put on his door, and he supposedly, allegedly, and there's evidence we have written that some of his family still does this, but allegedly he was into devil worship. All right, it's serious now. This should make you perk up. This is the family that still says how much of your American money can be printed and how much stuff happens in the world, because the stuff don't happen in the world if it don't get printed money, and you're still going into debt, being enslaved by these persons, and you don't even realize that the Federal Reserve is not part of the United States government. That's not alleged, by the way. And what's not alleged too, just in case you've never been, right? I used to walk through here walk through where I'm talking about all the time. In Washington D.C., how you doing, Tuckwa? In Washington D.C., when you walk and you see the White House, it is the only building now underground, different story, but it is the only building that over on top of the ground you will be able to see it connected to the White House. The only one. Did you know that? Matter of fact, some of you, I don't know if they showed it to you, when you saw the White House and Trump had gotten rid of the whole, with the East Wing or whatever, basically, and was going to turn into the ballroom and all that stuff, right? A lot of you may not know, they're right on the other side. If you look carefully, they probably didn't put it in there too much, but if you look carefully, there's a tube that goes, right? A nice little clear thing that goes from the Federal Reserve to the White House. Is the West Wing? Okay, my fault. West Wing, East Wing, forgive me. Whichever one it was, one of them wings, right? If it's West Wing, please forgive me, right? But you'll see on the other side, you can walk right in, right? So, matter of fact, I think, what's that movie with the guy who played Leonidas in 300, and he had to come over there to save the president, and he had messed up, and the president's wife had got off or something, and so he felt sad about it, and he left the Secret Service and he started working in the Federal Reserve building. If you see how the movie, when all the bullets start flying and everything, and all that craziness starts happening, he's literally leaving right next door from the Federal Reserve and coming over to the White House. They're connected. Well, I have to do some research on that since to talk. Well, I'm not sure. It could be, may not be, as far as I know. Right. Okay. Gerard Butler or whatever. Angel is fallen. Okay. There you go. Whatever. That's right. Something is fallen. That's right. Yeah. But you have to realize that you're going from one to the other. Right. They're connected. That's the same family. Now, so he was Rothschild. So he would put a star on his door, and he had an idea where he started coming up with stuff where he said, you know what? Persons being in debt makes money and everything. He said, well, what if governments could go into debt? So he was getting persons to sign up, take loans. They had to pay him back. And what he decided to do, he said, you know what? Like, because there was actually a problem. You see it in movies and stuff, still to this day, where persons will go through, and let's say somebody's leaving Paris, right? Paris, France, right? Paris, France, and they're trying to go from there to London, England, right? Or they're trying, London, England, across the water. Let's say they're trying to go to Paris, France to Portugal, or they're trying to go to Lisbon, or they're trying to go to Germany, Portugal, Spain, whatever, somewhere, right? And so they say, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and they would ride, royalty would ride, but they would ride with the cash. They would ride with these, you see them as the treasure trunks and all that stuff. They would ride with them, and while riding with them, persons would try to rob them. That's why they had to, not only because they were royalty, but also because they carried a lot of money with them. So what they would start doing, Rothschild had this idea. He says, you know what? He has a bunch of children, and he raises them specifically to do what he does, and he puts one in Paris. He puts one in London, right? He puts one in, forgive me, what's the capital of Germany? I don't recall at the moment, right? He puts one there. He puts one in Moscow. He puts one, and what he does is he says, okay, when they travel back and forth, what we'll do is we'll have a whole bunch of gold in all these places. We already rich. What we'll do is we'll say, okay, you can just sign what we now has kind of become a check. You can just sign off. All right, I'm gonna, that I'm leaving, and I'm leaving with this much money. And then when you get over to the next place, so you can have your money, we'll keep it safe for you. When you get here, you don't even have to worry about protecting it. When you get here, you come to us, and we'll give you the money, right? And then, and you keep doing that over and over and over again, right? So now, when you have this stuff going on, right? So now when you have these things going on, somebody getting to where they are, now this family is getting stuff and getting paid with interest. And by the way, what happens if somebody says, I want to write a little something, they come to find out on their journey from one place to another, they don't have it anymore because something happened in their country, or their value of whatever they were saying they had has gone down or whatever. Well, now this family is taking over. So a lot of persons don't know, when you hear stuff like the Bank of England, that's not England's bank. Right. Matter of fact, that was actually a bank that a lot of churches made money off of. Once again, we're out of slavery and stuff. Once again, going back to the guilds that are in on this too. right? You hear Federal Reserve, you think that has something to do. You hear Bank of Germany. That's not a Bank of Germany. Right? That doesn't belong to them, right? You hear this is Russia, or actually Russia doesn't deal with them. Russia got rid of them. Russia doesn't deal with them. That's one of the reasons why they hate Putin. Putin is not doing everything great, but one of the reasons why they be putting some of the stuff on Putin that they do is because he won't let them in, right? Matter of fact, it is alleged the Rothschild family tried to take out link. We think there's a connection there with how easy it was for them to get to Lincoln and how these persons came together to get him. Because if you do some research on it, Lincoln literally even says something specific about, hey, he has two enemies. When there was a Civil War, he said this. This is a quote that's not talked about with him. He had a quote where he said, "I have two great enemies. I have one in front of me and one behind me." What was that enemy he was talking about? He was saying that I got to fight against the Confederacy, but I'm also fighting against the banks. Before Lincoln, right? That's president number 16. Yeah, 16. Before Lincoln, I believe, is president number 7, right? Is Jackson. Before Lincoln, Jackson was the only president, even though he racist and all this other stuff, and he slave owner, and he committed genocide, right? We're not gonna pretend that a town destroyer is worthy of all this praise or whatever. But to be fair, Jackson is the only president who ever had zero, who came into office where there was a bunch of debt and left with zero debt. He's the only president that's ever existed where the United States of America had zero debt. And you know how he got the zero debt? He said, I'm going to get rid of who? I'm going to get rid of the Rothschild family. Before it was called Federal Reserve, there were versions of it called First National Bank, Second National Bank, Third National Bank. He said, I'm going to get rid of that, right? And we're going to go ahead and say we're going to deal with the United States. Matter of fact, Lincoln was trying to deal with something called greenbacks. When you hear that term, we're going to use them greenbacks. That's not just because your dollar is green. They were trying to use a different currency. There's another president that you may or may not know of, Calvin Coolidge, by the way, not the greatest man in the world, especially towards us. He's somebody who made a point to say, matter of fact, those who did the watch party with us for Birth of a Nation, you saw this on the screen where they were quoting him quite a bit, where he was saying that the KKK was necessary to make sure that they kept the boot of the black man off of the white man's neck, right? So, not the greatest person towards us. However, to be fair, though, to be righteous as far as telling the truth, he is somebody who made it a point to come out and tell persons that he gave the Rothschilds too much power. And because he gave them too much power, he was afraid of what was going to end up happening with the gold standard. If you notice later on, JFK, right, all this magic bullet stuff and everything, but what was something JFK was going to do? JFK followed everything to the letter except one thing. He said, well, we're not going to go ahead and have this money. We know that it's actually against the law for us to be letting you tell us when we can print money or whatever, or having you even be in charge of our money. So what we'll do is we'll pay off whatever debt we have to you, and then we'll start using our own currency. Pew pew. Brother gonna come and do the same thing. Pew pew. But who ran against him and then eventually becomes president? Nixon. And what does Nixon come in and say? Yes, sir, boss. I'll get rid of that gold standard for you. Like, this is something something that still exists, right? There's something that still exists, something we're still going through, right? And yes, a lot of these European places, they are the same bloodline too, right? And by the way, Rothschilds are married into that bloodline, meaning that now you're double dipping, because now you're the royalty who gets to do all these loans and stuff and make all this money off of this stuff, while at the same time being the ones that are there. So this is part of the Rothschild legacy. So a lot of you might not know this. In the midst of all that I was talking about, there's something called World War II. And in World War II, up until the end of World War II, Israel, right, what we call Israel, it wasn't even called Israel at that point, it was Palestine, right? And Palestine basically belongs to a bunch of either former Israelites or persons who have even appropriated culture, appropriated Muslim culture, appropriated Israelite culture, right, etc., right? But it doesn't belong to the matter of fact, if you look at some movies that still exist today that you can watch on YouTube that show you what it looked like in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, you will discover that if you look at these videos and look at what Israelites look like, they look like us. So it wasn't until the 1940s that all of a sudden the Palestinian area, just like India, by the way, that's the same time India and Gandhi and all that's happening. A little lesser story that's being told is that Israel, right, that England can't afford to be over Israel as well because of all the stuff that's been happening with the war. Just kind of the same story if you know the story about the seven years war and all that, and how America used that to be able to try and get freedom, right? So England is at a tough spot because they've been fighting, having all this stuff going on. They're fighting with China as well. We just talked about some of that stuff going on with China in some of our Q&A recently, right? With the opium wars and all that. There's a lot of stuff going on, and they've bitten off way more than they can chew. They cannot afford to keep everybody in line anymore. They just can't afford it. They can't bribe, Indians to police Indians anymore. They can't bribe, Americans to police Americans anymore. They can't bribe. They can't pay off, basically. They can't have you be a house Negro anymore to keep the field Negroes in check. They can't do it. So they say, okay, Israel basically is going to be sold. It wasn't called Israel then, right? But Israel is going to be sold. How you doing, Sister Mignon, if that's what it is? Right, not sure if it is. I think so. Right, Miss P. So Israel is going to be sold. So since Israel is going to be sold, it's going to be sold to who? Really, the highest bidder. But the Rothschilds went to what's his face, Churchill, have a conversation with him, and they basically also have a conversation with Jewish persons. And a lot of you may not know this, but Jewish persons had to actually lay off. This is why there's a lot of, how they say white guilt and white fragility. There's a lot of Jewish guilt and Jewish fragility that's not talked about, because a lot of Jewish persons that should have been saved were not saved because there was a deal that was made that basically certain things will need to happen so that they can go ahead and make it easier for the transference of power. And so as they go into Israel, and guess what they put on the Israelite or the Israeli flag? The Star of David. It's the Rothschild star, but they call it now the Star of David because a lot of persons are going to research, a lot of persons are going to know, like, they would say in Egypt, the prime minister of Egypt would say, well, when you left, you were black, and now that you come back, you're white. Because Israelites were, technically not living there, and the ones that did live there, we knew what they looked like. Right? But if we're saying Israel's actually coming back, he's like, well, how are you coming back and you're not who you were when you left? Right? And I'm not doing the thing that you have to be black to be Israel, or you have to be black to be saved. No. What I'm telling you is historically, it doesn't make sense. If we know that you guys look a certain way, and then you come back and you don't look anywhere close to what you used to look like, it doesn't make sense. Right? Like you're supposed to have a certain look. You're supposed to have locks. You're supposed to have, skin that is dark. You look like the ancient Kemetic persons did. You were married into Kemet. You were married in the Kush, right? Like you were. We know who you are. How are you somebody completely different now? Right? That was their mindset, right? So, but that was a Rothschild purchase. So when you hear a lot of this conversation and you don't think about, well, the Federal Reserve and the banks and the worldwide banking system and the banking system in this. And by the way, everybody who's been on the Federal Reserve, who's been the president, everybody, because they're married into all these families. Everybody who's sat as president and on the council, maybe everybody not on the council possibly, but everybody who sat, right, in the position of being in charge of the Federal Reserve Bank, every single one. Everyone who sat in charge of being in the position of the banks of Israel. Everybody who sat in the position of being prime minister of Israel, which I guess would make sense. Not our Israel, but modern Israel. They're all Ashkenazi. And they're all Ashkenazi married to Rothschilds if they are not Rothschild Ashkenazi themselves. So when Stephen was stoned, he was stoned for speaking against Malak, who basically is like a Nimrod type figure, is basically like who was it that they had Darius and them worshipped, who basically is a heathen. And Paul, before when he was Saul, watched over the persons who stoned Stephen, Deacon Stephen, right? Which means now, if you look at it, Paul was willing to off persons not because he was so lawful at that time. He had to actually learn what the law was really about. He was raised thinking because he's Israel, whatever an Israelite tells him is righteous, which means that if anybody goes against anything they're doing, including putting money in their pockets for some Israelites, he went with it. Then come to find out, he didn't have that Christ in him. He did not have proper discernment in him. So he was living by the law of sin. Sound familiar? Romans chapter 7. He was living by the law of sin. Therefore, Romans 8, he deserved to be condemned. But because he then began to live by the law of the Spirit, which is taking the flesh off of the law and letting the law be what it was supposed to be, he now became somebody who could say he followed the law of the Spirit, which is the law of origin, in its origin. So therefore, even Paul, when he's talking about this stuff, we don't recognize Paul is making the point to say, contextually, a lot of y'all are talking about that you actually follow the law, but you don't know it. You don't even know Christ. You wouldn't know Christ because Christ is supposed to be a stumbling stone of offense to you. Because of Balaam doctrine, somebody has decidedly, purposefully, specifically, diligently, etc., taken every single opportunity that they may have to ensure that they can have you believing certain things that are not even true, just like that Star of David. Oh, come on, somebody. Right? How you doing, Nacho? Come on, somebody. Right? This is specifically, intentionally, purposefully, diligently, exquisitely to the sinner done. In a manner where you would be like, well, why is there any problem with it? I mean, they're just doing blah, blah. They're just taking care of their people. We don't even know all the stuff that took place. Right? We don't even know all the stuff that took place. Now, why is this even important, by the way, if we talk about Sardis? Well, it's important if we're talking about this with Sardis or Sardis. It's important because you need to recognize that Sardis, once again, had a heavy Israelite population, but they started mixing and matching things culturally. And if you missed this, once again, let's go back now here to Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. This is the first assembly, all four assemblies. Yehoshua starts off by saying, I know thy works, and I know you do this, and I know you do this well, and I know you do this well, and I know you do this well, and I'm really proud of this person, I'm proud of that person. But there's something I have against it. This is the first time we've seen out of the 7 assemblies. More than likely, this is why they made this the next chapter, right? Because the first 4 assemblies in chapter 2. This starts at Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. Right? And here, I'm on, Brother Dwayne. And here, he starts off different. He says, and to the messenger, and to the angel, to the assembly, to the Questionnaire at Sardis, of Sardis, right? These things saith he that hath 7 spirits of Elohim. He has what? 7 spirits. So 7 spirits that go to the 7 assemblies. So these assemblies are dealing with spiritual influence. We need to give something that comes from the spirit of Yah to make sure that they can combat the spiritual influence. Okay. All right. So the 7 spirits of Elohim and the 7 stars, the one that has the 7 messengers. Hey, I need you to recognize this message that I have. He says what? I know thy works. Like he says with everybody else, but then what does he say following? He says, yeah, I know thy works, that thou hast a name. Ooh, this is going to hurt. This is one of those, if the shoe fits, wear it. If it don't, take it off. He says, I know you have a name, that thou livest and art dead. In other words, you have an authority. When persons speak your name, as soon as we hear Sardis, wherever we are in the world, this is what he's saying. When I hear Sardis, when others hear Sardis, what we think of you is that you are alive, but are really dead. What makes us alive? Who gives us life? See, don't miss this. This is not something we just flippantly read and go through and like, okay, yeah, whatever, we'll go to the next part. No. What makes us alive? Hallelujah. John 10:10. The Satan cometh, but what? To steal, to kill, and to destroy. Yehoshua says, but I have come, that ye might have life, and more abundantly. I know some of you got that word it in there. That's in italics. It wasn't original. That you might have more abundantly. Why is that important? Well, a lot of us think that because we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we don't fear evil. Well, reality is a lot of you walk through life and walk through the valley. How you doing, double OG, triple OG, excuse me, right? A lot of you are walking around thinking that because your heart is beating, you're alive. And you're alive to a certain degree, but you're not alive in Christ. And so he's making it the point here to say, hey, I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all. When persons say your name, Sardis, when persons say your name, such and such assembly, when somebody says your name, such and such church, when somebody says your name, we think about somebody who, they might know some scripture and stuff. They might say that they follow Christ. Now you might say you follow Yahweh or Yahuwah or Yahweh, etc. But he said, we hear what you're saying. But when we look at your life, your heart might be you're a zombie, as I say it a lot of times, a spiritual zombie. I know there's no such thing in Bible, but a lot of us comprehend what a zombie is, right? How you doing, Roger Ray? Thanks for being part of the community. In a sense, you're like a zombie. You wake up, you do the same exact thing, you go to sleep. You wake up, you do the same exact thing, you go to sleep. You wake up, you do the same exact thing, you go to sleep. You wake up, you do the same exact thing, you go to sleep. You wake up, you do the same thing, you go back to sleep. You wake up, you do the same exact thing, you go to sleep. You wake up, and you say, oh, I'm going to go to church. And then you go back and repeat the same cycle. Right? When we hear your name, or even the names that you use in your worship, we hear what you're saying, right? We know that you think that you're alive, but really there's no life in you. Be careful with a lot of these Christians who, by the way, can be very interesting persons to listen to with apologetics, because they might have a lot of great things to say, but when we look at their life, it's dead. They don't even see the life in Christ. They don't even really. Do you know that a lot of Christian apologists do not even believe that the Bible is really real? Like, they believe that there's certain things that are real, but certain things that could be fiction. They liken it to nonfiction they liken the Bible to being like not being nonfiction or fiction, which is a very wild place. This is what they'll teach you when you go to Bible college and seminary. You got to be careful. They'll teach you the Bible as if it's basically a fable, but a fable mixed in with actual characters. This is what they teach. This is what they believe. How you doing, Kenneth? And thank y'all for the love. Appreciate y'all on all platforms. I really, really do. Right? So you'll hear a lot of Christian apologists, but listen to them. But then some of them you listen to, start listening to what they're saying, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, the Bible's not fiction, nor is it nonfiction. And this part of the Bible is just purely poetic. And this part of the Bible is just made up. And this part of the Bible, no. Like, yeah, we get that there can be things that are parabolic. But for you to be sitting up here acting like this is not real or that we don't have, no, like you're out of pocket. But we don't know that. So somebody does really well and we're so happy. We're like, yeah, man, they defended the faith. They did this, they did that. We're ready to go ahead and, give them all this credit. But then you hang in and you're like, then you should say later on, wait a minute, isn't this the same guy? Yeah, because they don't believe it. When we hear their name, we know they're alive. Or they're known for being alive, but really being dead. That's what he says. I know thy works, not what you say. I know your works. And thou hast a name, when I hear your name, that thou livest. When everybody says you're alive, when everybody says check you out, when everybody says go to your church, when everybody says listen to the word, we go there and we find out, oh, wait a minute, you'll drag your wife in front of everybody and then preach a word when everybody doesn't like what's going on, to say basically, hey, I need my wife to be sexy and I need to make sure that my wife does something for me. And if you don't have somebody that does something for you, then that's your problem. But I have a wife that does something for me. Meanwhile, the Bible says not only about modesty, right? Talks about modesty, number one, but number two, talks about protecting your wife. So why would you put her out there? But really more so than that, number three, in reality, why would you even do something that appears to be evil? There's a time and a place for everything, but you saying that you're doing something to usher in the spirit is not a time for persons to be looking at the outfit and saying, is that her skin or is that something else? And by the way, you present your wife, part 4 of that, if I may, you present your wife into yourself. I'm not one of these dudes that if a woman goes out and her cleavage haven't been shown or whatever, but that's something you talk with your wife about. I'm not trying to look at your wife's cleavage though. I'm not trying to look and see if your wife has stuff to where I'm like, wait a minute, is that her nipple show? And as she's getting closer, I don't even want to shake her hand or get close or even do a church hug thing because I'm sitting there thinking, I don't even want to be in the picture because it makes me look like I'm hugging on somebody that's not my wife, especially dressed like that. And my wife, if I be honest with you, she ain't trying to have me around nobody like that, right? Hugging up on them either. You don't have to say amen. That's why it's our marriage. Now, if in your marriage, y'all do stuff like that, cool. But there's a time and a place for it, right? There's a time and a place where my wife and I, we might go somewhere and yeah, let this show, let blah blah whatever, right? Right? Or if we doing something by ourselves, or we doing something over the mountaintop, or there's a time and a place. But you present your wife into yourself. So, brother, why are you sitting up there saying I should want to look at your wife and look at your wife and say, oh, she's sexy, and therefore now I'm gonna try to make my wife look like your wife. That's your wife. Let her be sexy when it's time to be sexy. This is the same kind of spirit that we're dealing with today in Sardis. This Sardis spirit. Yeah, he said he bought it that dress if it was in the word of Yah. Yeah, and basically went to a thing once again. And you got to recognize too, can I be honest? Look, some of y'all are in this position anyways, right? And not everybody has to live up to this position or whatever. But look, my wife and I are leaders of a branch of Israel, right? We're a branch on the tree. If you want to say we're a twig on the branch, whatever, right? So if somebody gets fruit from us and the fruit don't taste right, then it means that everybody on the tree don't taste right. That's how they look. If they've only tasted the fruit, taste and see that Yehovah Tabah. That's all you got, Texas? No problem. Thank you for being on. If that's the best that you got, and even your trolling is terrible. You got anything that's actually of value? Probably not. Right? But anyways. Right? Anyways. There we have to get to a place where we recognize and realize. How you doing, Brother Josh? You got to get to a place where you realize and recognize, like, you represent. We be the nation. We is a nation. Right? We was kings. No, we is kings. Right? And no king would allow his kingdom or any other kingdom that he has a treaty with to make, because if I do one thing, it makes everybody look bad. And this is something we don't like. And I get it where it's like, well, why can't a black person commit a crime? I get that. That's a different kind of conversation, right? It's not apples to apples. But that being said, there is something to be said for the fact that, hey, if I do something and my brother Dwayne, or my sister Mignon, or whomever, right? If I do something, if my wife and I do something, and they say they part of the same family, and somebody sees me doing something crazy, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna walk up to Brother Dwayne and Sister Mignon, and they're gonna say, y'all part of that? I thought y'all said y'all believe this. Y'all part of that? You say we supposed to look up to you, and you guys say you look up to him, and you guys say you look up to him because he looks up to Christ. But Christ is okay with that. And if we be honest, that's more what that is. That's more of, hey, I want persons to be able to come to my building. I want persons to watch my stuff. I want persons to come to my podcast. I want persons to do all this stuff, and I want to go ahead. Matter of fact, we're taught even to make sure that we don't address certain business from the pulpit. So if you got a problem with my wife wearing or whatever, and you got a podcast, you could have done that on the podcast, not done it in the pulpit. But see, this is when we have to start saying to ourselves, ooh, there's a lot of stuff. There's some spiritual influences going on. Mm-hmm. Also, too, in Sardis, by the way, they worshipped Cybele, which basically is one and the same with Artemis, which is basically one and the same with Aphrodite, right? They worship in the Pergamum dynasty who we would call Ishtar. Same person, right? Now, why is all this even necessary to go through? We haven't even gone through scripture, but we are, because we're laying down context. You might not know this. See, when John is writing this, he's writing this to specific persons at a specific time, telling us to pay attention to it, but we were supposed to have continued to tell this story. This is why, if you don't know any better, you might not know that you need to know about Asher to be able to make some things in there, even though the Bible tells you. So you don't know to go to Jasher, even though the Jasher Bible tells you twice in the book of Jasher to go there, right? Was it in Chronicles, First Chronicles, and in Samuel, First Samuel, Second Samuel, one of them, right? Tells you that you need to go look, right? But you might not know that that fills in the gaps. You've been told there's only 66 books when your 66 books tell you to read 67. And if you read that 67th and you find out that things match, and if you read the book of Enoch and find out that things match, and if you know what a shot means, and if you get into different things, and if you know that Ecclesiastes is just the first 12 chapters of Ecclesiasticus, therefore, why would you not read Ecclesiasticus, right? Knowing that the first 12 chapters match word for word. If they match word for word, then how is it a different book? And if somebody cut out some of the chapters, you might want to read them for context. If you want to say that, there's literally a feast of dedication, guess what dedication means in Hebrew, right? Chanavakach, or what you call Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is the feast of dedication. If there's a feast of dedication where even though Christ, it doesn't tell us Christ was a part of it, at the same time, though, the feast of dedication was there. It doesn't say Christ said anything was wrong with it. It said he was in the temple during the time of the feast of dedication, talking about something else. Well, then you might want to learn about Maccabees, which, by the way, historically documented. Everybody in there that's documented, we literally know is historically documented. So Matthew, not the Matthew who wrote the Bible, but Matthew and Maccabees, and Judah and Maccabees, and the Maccabeans that came, and them basically fighting like the Maroons did in the Caribbean. All that stuff is historically documented. Herod is historically documented later. All these things are tied together. But you've been told not to read things that are historically accurate. Why would somebody tell you, we 100% know this happened? Why would somebody tell you it's wrong to read it? And we know this stuff is historically accurate. Like, we can literally say, if you don't believe in the Bible, there's somebody who is a historian that you think you should believe more than the Bible. Cool. They say the same exact thing happened. Except what we wrote was written before they wrote it. But okay, you need them, because they're Greek, to verify it. So now that they verified it, why would you say why would you tell persons not to read it? Salah. Or Selah. Or pause and think about it, right? Doesn't make sense. Unless it's Balaam doctrine. Unless it's Nicolaitan doctrine. Unless they rather know about Ishtar rather than Passover, or Easter rather than Passover. Unless they'd rather you do Christmas instead of Feast of Dedication. Unless they'd rather you not know your holy days, which John had to keep the holy day. He had to keep the Lord's Day, which more than likely doesn't necessarily mean a holy day. It could, but it means bare minimum he was keeping Sabbath. Like keeping Shabbat, he actually got revelation. Yet persons will tell you that they're not supposed to keep Sabbath and will preach revelation. Somebody help me out with that. Can somebody help me with that, please? I'm being so sincere. I do not even know how to express how much righteous indignation pops up in me when somebody has the audacity, right? The gall, the chutzpah, right? The intestinal fortitude to say that I'm going to teach you from Revelation while telling you that I don't believe in the seventh day being kept. Meanwhile, this revelation does not exist if John's not keeping the Lord's day. Okay, thank you so much. Well, if you're coming from a position of where it's just lore or whatever, cool. Either way, you could learn something from it or not. I know a little bit about that or whatever, and it's not necessarily the same. And I know we do the whole thing too about Thoth. It's kind of the same thing that people are trying to do with Thoth, or trying to do with, Horus, or trying to do with, the Serapis Christ or Gnosticism, and make these arguments and stuff, even though Gnosticism existed for hundreds of years and didn't look like that. And by the way, it wasn't called Gnosticism either. That's a new title that person needs to put on it. It's Stoicism and all these different whatevers, right? Stoicism, rather, Stoicism, right, too. Because Stoicism, I'm sorry, that's Marcus Aurelius. And we take that from his journal, which he didn't write as a book. And we forget, oh yeah, but what about all the genocide and stuff too? But it's a different culture. We're coming from this from very cultural prism, right? Going back to Gilgamesh, a person trying to say all that, yeah, I'm already hip, right, to a lot of that stuff. It's not culturally relevant as much as persons think, but sometimes persons, like with Horus, for example, somebody would say Horus had disciples and so did Christ, and Well, Horus was born to a mother of same way. He was an immaculate conception himself. No, he wasn't. His mother was in a necrophilia. Her husband, who was supposed to be a netcher, he was off by other netchers. She couldn't find all his body parts. She made up an obelisk, a mock penis, and put it on him. She wrote it. Supposedly got pregnant with Horus. And Horus, by the way, doesn't operate the same. Horus almost got impregnated by his uncle. But persons had now some persons don't know any of this stuff. I get it, right? But if you're thinking of all this as a myth, then so be it. This is not for you. Like I said, the Bible's not written to everybody. Literally, it tells you from the beginning who it's written to. Even Revelation, the scroll specific, it says in Revelation 1:1 who it's for, who it's from. In Revelation 1:3, it tells you that if you're not going to read it, hear it, and keep it, then this is not going to make sense to you. If you don't even know the times, and half a time, what that means in physical, and also what that means in dreams, to be able to tell what they're actually outlining as far as years, you won't even know 538 AC to 1798 AC, what that period even means and what it's telling you is coming in advance. If you don't know Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, you don't even know what's going on with the four-headed leopard and how he's connected to the bronze, right? There's a lot of persons who will come in and a lot of things. That's why we have to what? Read it, hear it, and keep it. This is a cultural thing. And even if you believe this to be a myth, every myth still should be protected in culture. I was doing this with somebody else's myth yesterday when we were talking about narcissists. If you say you're a narcissist and you think you're a narcissist because you're violent and this and that, then you need to find out who narcissist actually was. Right? Like a lot of you are calling yourself narcissists because you want to go ahead and have this thing, or you've had a bad experience, you heard somebody use the term, and so you want to just say anybody who's bad to you, call them a narcissist. No, that's not what a narcissist is. You got to know who narcissist was, right? If you're going to talk about the S-O-N is the S-U-N and everybody worship the sun and blah, blah. We did not worship the sun. That's not our thing. But if you look at Baldur or Apollos or Ra, now we can have a conversation. Matter of fact, if you go, what we talked about in Q&A recently, if you go and look at the 10 plagues, the 10 plagues are literally against netchers, and one of the last 2 plagues are dealing with the netcher of the sun, Ra, and then the one who says he's supposed to be the sun on earth, who's going to die and go through the process, heart lighter than a feather, 42 confessions of Ma'at, all that. He's supposed to do that to be able to get into his place to get back up into heaven. So the 9th plague and the 10th plague are specifically against 2 specific netchers, or so-called netchers. The same thing that the other 8 plagues were about as well, specific netchers. There was a frog netcher, deal with the frog. It's supposed to be somebody who's dealing with fertility and all that. Well, then guess what? I'll show you that I'm in charge of frog's fertility so much that you won't be able to take a step without stepping on a frog, right? You say there's a netcher of the dust. I will make the dust of the ground turn into flies that are all over you. You say that there's a netcher of the crops. I'll make sure that there's locusts that will eat your crops. Like these were attacks on specific netchers. See, there's a context. So somebody's just trying to reach for this and blah, blah, this and that. Even if you're going to call it myth, you got to at least respect the myth and the culture who would have came up with it enough to know. Now, for me, this is not a myth. This is not just virtual, it's reality. This is not something that actually happens. I live this every day enough to actually know what is going on. But I respect cultures enough to actually look into them rather than go, everybody worship gods, when God is a Germanic Gullic thing, principle. And the only reason you use that term is because you still are into the thought process and religiosity of the Gauls rather than the thought process and religiosity of the ones who wrote the word. As Paul would say, Romans chapter 10, verses 13 through 16, right? Anyone who calls upon the name of Yahweh, they shall be saved. And how can one be saved? Right? So first of all, you got to call on a specific name, the name of the Lord. But how can one be saved if they don't believe? And how can one believe or have faith? Same word, pistes, right? Pistes, right? How can one believe what they have not heard? How can one hear what is not proclaimed or preached? How can one preach it if they not be sent by the right place, from the right place? Right? For how beautiful are the feet of those who walk in the way. Therefore, when somebody like me shows up, Paul quotes Isaiah, and he says, when we show up, who shall believe our report? It's not everybody's report, because not everybody lives this. Right? You don't research things looking through the prism that we do. You're looking through somebody else's prism, the prism of the guild, the prism of the corporation. You study Santa Claus through what Coca-Cola told you. You talk about 12 days of Christmas, not knowing that 12 days of Christmas was 12 days you're supposed to switch places. That comes from Saturnalia. That comes from winter solstice. You go inside and you make sure you have a Christmas tree because you have to have an evergreen tree to bring life in, and you're hoping that Thor and Odin, who are flying around in their sleigh with Tooth Snatcher, Tooth Grinder, and I forget what Odin's 8-legged horse was called, right? But you're hoping that they're not going to come in and get you. Right? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer right? It's based off of these things contextually. It's based off of a whole bunch of stuff, right? But they were supposed to be afraid of it. I told you guys, homework assignment, if you've never done this before, go watch Futurama and look up Futurama Santa Claus and see how Santa Claus is depicted. That's actually closer to the origins of Thor in Odin, when they were afraid of him, and you would come inside to make sure you had light, but you were afraid to be out in the streets because the sun wasn't up, and for them, they thought that since the sun was down, they were supposed to be afraid of it. That's why we're told in Jeremiah chapter 10. See, this is not just, see what I'm saying? You don't know how this stuff goes together. That's why Jeremiah chapter 10 says, hey, do not be like them. Do not go out into the woods. Do not be like the heathen. Do not go into the woods. Do not hire a person to chop down a tree. Do not make sure you bring the tree into your house. Do not stand it up and nail it so it stands straight up. Do not paint it silver and gold, right? But these are the things that persons still do and say that they believe in the Bible. It's a wicked spirit. See, it's about appearance. All these things that we're talking about with Sardis today, it's about appearance. Now, here's something heavier too. If some of you know this, some of you don't, but here's something that's a little heavier too. Okay? If we speak on these things, we have to also talk about the history of the gym or the gymnasium. How you doing, Fritz? See, we have to talk about the history of the gym or the gymnasium. Now this is not the only place that there was a gymnasium, but they had a very interesting gymnasium, a huge gymnasium, and even one to where when I tell you a couple things about it, you go, ooh, I did not know that. So if we talk about the gymnasium, right? When I say gymnasium spirit, right? This, when we talk about this stuff, when we speak on this stuff, let's have a little bit of dialogue. All right, watch this. You ready? So when we're talking about this gymnasium spirit, if you will, what was the gymnasium for in its origin? There are other things that are added on. And by the way, there's nothing new under the sun. The same things you do at the gym now or what they were doing back then. I'm talking about all of it. From your pools to tracks to run around, to equipment to lift, or places for you to go ahead and do aerobics. All those things, that's nothing new. Come on. I see you, Minister Raj. Right? It was about, I'm sorry, you say it's the truth that John was exiled to Patmos because of his testimony. Well, he was exiled to Patmos at the end of the day because of his preaching the word. Was it exactly his testimony? That's kind of up in the air as far as what that actually means. But yeah, he was preaching the word, galvanizing us, if you will. That's a little too much, because we're taken away from power. And also too, to speak the truth, that means he has to speak against the government. So he ended up, in prison. Right? But see, we got to know about this gymnasium thing. The gymnasium was first created for the gladiator, for a slave. Yeah, gladiators were slaves, if you were not aware. It was created for the slave. Right? He was created. Amen, Sister Carly. Yeah, he was created. It was created for slaves. It was not created just for you to go ahead. Now, some of you were slaves to that membership. Whether you go or not, you still paying that $40, $50 a month. Right? But it was not created for everybody. It was created for slaves. How you doing, Ingram? Now, I'm not saying you can't work out. I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep track of our health. I'm not saying that, those things do not matter. What I'm telling you is the gymnasium was created for slaves. And the slaves would go there and they would work out. And they would work out bucket naked, as we used to say when I was little. They used to work out with no clothes on. They were slaves. And this was a place where they might have even been fed, basically like we would call it gruel and stuff today. They were fed certain things to keep them healthy enough to fight. But, they were supposed to fight and die. Not all of them died. Not as many died as what they tell you nowadays, but their lives were in service to their Lord, to their master, to their emperor, the emperor. Emperor just means the head slave master. Oh yeah, it's freaky. By the way, Aphrodite, Ishtar, that's sexual perversion. So that's what they worship. So of course you would have them there. But there's two other deities or deists. You once again, if you're into the Germanic stuff, you call them gods. You said that's why the more in shape you are, the less clothing you want to wear. It's cultural. Yep, that's part of it too, right? But there was something that was there in this as well, because there were two other spirits that were worshipped, two other, myths, if you will, and they weren't myths, but spiritual warfare is real. So I want to be careful, even when persons just label things as, oh, it was just a myth. It's a spirit. How you doing, Sakim? Right? And shalom, peace, barak to everybody who's on today. We appreciate you. Thank you for being on with us. How you doing the journey, Yah? Everybody who's on all the different platforms, whether you're watching live, watching later on, whatever the case might be. We are very appreciative of your being with us today. We're going to take our time in this series, this Revelation series, and today we're on Sardis. We still got a little ways to go. All praises to the Most High. All right, so watch this. All praises to the Most High. Right? Right? All right. So watch this. And how you doing, Sarah Fox? Feel like a long time no talk to. Hopefully all's been well. Right? So how you doing, Minister Morel? We were just praying for you earlier this rising. All praises to the Most High for seeing you on. Right? So watch this. They already worshiping Ishtar. Right? Artemis. We already know that. Okay? Who else they worshiping? Who else are they worshiping? Come on, somebody. They worship Heracles and they worship Nike. You know them more so by Hercules and Hermes. By the way, Futurama, Hermes is in there too. They just put him as a black Jamaican, right? So y'all think because Jamaicans supposed to be hard workers, but if you know who Hermes is supposed to be in Greek lore, that's why he's leading them, as a bureaucrat, right? Making sure that he's leading them in how to ship things. That's why his name is Hermes, right? So they worship. Well, Achilles kind of is similar, right? He kind of becomes morphed into some of the stories, even though Achilles is more so really supposed to be, and they don't even really tell his story correct. He's supposed to be more of like the Troy story, even though he's in other stories as well. And that story is even crazier because a lot of y'all they didn't want to show you in the movie because they knew that y'all was gonna lose your minds if they actually told the truth about Achilles and his cousin. But the guy who plays his cousin, or the character that's his cousin in the movie, is actually supposed to be his lover. They gave him the girl lover, but his lover is supposed to actually be the one that they portray as his cousin. But yeah, so Achilles, because he was shot in his ankle and stuff like that, or his feet, ankle, whichever you prefer, to go through whatever. But they, he eventually kind of was lumped in with Hermes. But Hermes is where you get Hermes' Roman name was Nike or Nike. So a lot of you may not know that, like, how in depth this stuff is, right? So you're still wearing Nike shoes and not realizing, the swoosh that you see, right, is supposed to be something that's a sign of how fast Hermes moved, right? I believe if you look at Hermes too, Hermes and Heimdall, at least in the modern telling of Heimdall, Hermes and Heimdall have a lot of similarities as well, if you know about Norse theology, right? But Hermes is who they worship. Hermes and Hercules. Right? And why would they worship besides sexual activity with Artemis and all that stuff and the trade routes that are going on and persons who are making big business, the guilds who also make big business through the slavery and the business of slavery, them being able to put on sporting events, gladiatorial sports and all that you really like, right? It's Sunday today and it was Saturday yesterday, and I know a whole bunch of persons were watching the Bears and the Packers and the who was the other ones that played? The Rams and the Panthers. And it's going to be Sunday today. And as much as everybody says they want to go to Sunday, they want to worship God and all this stuff, there are going to be a lot of persons interested in making sure they watch every little piece of what goes on during those sporting events. That's a gladiatorial game. If you get a chance, there's a book called $1 Million Slave. And a lot of persons can't stand the book. But it tries to tell you that you have to give up a lot in order to be LeBron James. he has more power. Like you can be a gladiator and work your way out. He has more power than many, but you have to be a lot. You have to give up a lot. You got to be a slave to the sport. You know, it's interesting. LeBron will always talk about the love that he has for the man upstairs. Will never say his name. Will never say God. You know, but the man above, the man upstairs. You know, very carefully crafted, by the way. Respect to him. Who knows what his faith and what it is, by the way. He does some things that would make me question some things. But that being said, that's for him and the Most High. But then he'll also, while saying the man above and stuff, he'll always talk about how he loves the game. And when you hear these person talk about the love of the game, they talk about it almost like the man who loves the streets. You ever thought about that? Yeah, that was a great book. It's a significant book, $1 Million Slave. Right? I need to go back and read it again. I mentioned it. It's been years since I've even picked that up. Right? Persons hate that book though. They'll say stuff like, "How can you call them a slave and they make millions of dollars?" It's like the same thing for persons, who play sports. Y'all remember what's the name of the guy that he played? I can't recall the school he played for. I see his face. Maurice something Maurice. He played for Ohio State, I believe. I could be wrong. He played for a really big school, did really well. I don't know if he won the Heisman, but he was like supposed to be really big, and he wanted to leave early to go to the NFL. And they said, "No, you can't come to the NFL because we need you to play at least 3 years in college." Why do they have that rule there? Because they need to make money off of you. It's just recently that they started letting persons start making money off their own name. They're making money off you. The guild, the trade routes. Like I know y'all. Some of y'all think LeBron James is overpaid because he's making $47 million. Until you realize, well, wait a minute, how much money did the Los Angeles Lakers make? Did they not just sell the team for $10 billion? Was it? If somebody will buy your team for $10 billion, LeBron James, in one sign of your pen, just made you $8 billion. Because for years, they haven't been showing up because they've been winning championships. They've been showing up to see LeBron James. And I know Luka just got there, but he just got there. And by the way, that means Luka is underpaid too. It's like when you go, see, persons don't recognize the same slavery. You don't like going to your job. You say you're underpaid at your job, but you think that they're not underpaid. You don't realize it's the same thing. Matter of fact, you're worse off. That's what you don't like, is that you're worse off than they are, and they have unionized enough to where they have enough power to be able to say, "Hey, we don't want to be under contract for 10 years. We don't want to be under contract for 7 years. We want the most of the contract to be 4 years, and even in that, we want to be able to say we want an option for the 5th year if we do one, so that if we decide to sign on, hey, I don't care if you want to try and get rid of me, you're going to get rid of me, but you're going to pay me first. Or if you send me somewhere else, they're going to pay me. If you can go ahead and trade me, then you might as well make sure that you pay me." But see, that's freedom. And persons are so anti-freedom. Oh yeah, we're gonna go some places with this today. Persons are so anti-freedom that they will fight for the person who is enslaving rather than to make sure that, one of the slaves got free. They'll fight for the emperor more than they'll fight for Spartacus. That'll make no sense, do it? You hear what I'm saying? Hey, this is why in your team, somebody on your team in football gets hurt. And up until they get hurt, right? This happened a few years ago. The guy ended up playing on the Dallas Cowboys, but before then, I think he played for the Seattle. Yeah, he played for the Seattle Seahawks, and played in the Legion of Boom. He was a safety. It was Richard Sherman, a couple other cats I can't remember, but he was a big staple in the back. And he kept saying he needed to get paid, blah blah. And everybody was saying, "Man, whatever, you just part of the team, da da." And then he gets hurt, and he got hurt, and basically his leg snapped. And even though he knew he was going to come back and play, he was never going to be the same again. It meant he wouldn't be able to get paid what he deserved. And he started flicking persons off as he was leaving the field. I forget what his name is. Could be Earl Thomas. Could be, I might have the wrong person. Right? But this is what's going on. We don't recognize these things. We don't know that this is real stuff that's going on every day. Every day you're being enslaved, and you're dealing with sports gladiators who are supposed to do nothing more than be willing to die for your entertainment. That's why y'all like that scene so much. Are you not entertained? Right? Right? That's all you want is for me to off people, right? Are you not entertained? Are you not are you not happy? That's all they do. When they go around, when Hulk Hogan used to hit you with this, y'all remember that? And then he would get all the sides and then he would start hitting you with the all that stuff, right? Are you not that's all you want. Who cares if they hurt themselves? Who cares if this? Everybody goes, oh man, so and so towards Achilles, man, praying for you. Prayers going up. You don't care. Ain't nobody sending them nothing. Ain't nobody. Once they go into the deep depressions. Matter of fact, some of them started recently talking about their mental health. Kevin Love, basketball player, he starts talking about his mental health. And everybody started getting on, including LeBron James. LeBron James basically told him, like, well, if you don't think you fit in, just find a way to fit in. Nobody cared about his mental health. Nobody cared that he was going through. Nobody cares that LeBron James, as great as he might be, and as much as he might have said that he wants to be something that y'all don't think he can, why not have high goals and say he wants to be the greatest? But y'all are on him because how dare he, as a 12-year-old, and then as a 15-year-old, as a 17-year-old, as a 19-year-old, as an 18-year-old, whatever, try to say all this stuff about how he's the greatest, or even though he wasn't the one saying it at first, and then he sees a commercial one day. See, we don't even think about stuff like this, right? He's sitting there, and then one day he sees this commercial, but they're talking about him, and it's a commercial that says, Bill Wilt. Like it was wild when I heard him say this because I was like, dang, we gave him like no grace at all as a society as a whole, right? But it's this commercial. The commercial pops up, Wilt, Bill, Kareem, Larry, Magic, Michael, Kobe, and then it's with a question mark, LeBron, and he's like, "Yo, man, I'm a teenager." He's like, "I'm just trying to play basketball," but no. And so from the time he plays, he has to have persons getting on him. He has to have a Skip Bayless and persons like that talking about, "Why do you do the powder toss at Michael Jordan?" Because he looked at the Michael Jordan. Oh, now he's trying to learn to play with his back to the basket. You just said he was bad because he didn't know how to play with his back to the basket. Oh, now he's not passing, blah, blah. You were mad when you said he was passing. You said he's supposed to always take the last shot and take over a game. Now he destroys the Detroit Pistons. What was it, like 25, 28, something like that, points in a row? Or 25 out of 27 points or something like that, or 25, 28 points, but basically 25 points in a row. He just scores at the end of the game in overtime, and he's the only one in a fourth quarter in overtime. Right, but it's a gymnasium spirit, man. Your life is in there, and we think that these persons' lives are in our hands. They're gladiators, they're slaves. And by the way, that's best case scenario, right? Best case scenario is to be like Messi, or to be like LeBron, or to be like Brady. That's best case scenario. I mean, it might have been. I'm not one to tell you that I know 100% or whatever. It could have been, could not have been, right? But as far as the gymnasium stuff, that's best case scenario. These are slaves. Think about the persons that come in and get paid a couple million, and then basically they're like, okay, like that's nice, and you think, oh, they got paid a couple million. Okay, well, even if they do well with it, prayerfully they do, it's not a guarantee they're gonna be able to live off that for the rest of their lives. And they spent their whole lives getting there, but you just go, well, they made it to the NBA, they made it to the NFL. Do you know in the NFL there's still persons who don't make $1 million a year? So if they get there and they play half a year, some of them only get the practice squads, basically living enough to be able to eat, and maybe somebody lets them stay at their house, trying to make the team. Maybe they make the team. They end up having a career-ending injury on their second or third game. You think that's enough for them to live off the rest of their life? But we don't care. We become callous. That's right. They're dehumanized to the point to where we become callous. We don't care. Shut up and dribble. If we say it's wrong what a so-called white woman does it to LeBron because of the racist innuendo or insinuation, right? We think it's wrong for her to say it, but the reality is we say stuff like that quite a bit. We treat persons wrong quite a bit, and we don't think twice about it. You're gonna be watching your team play today. You're gonna be watching your team play today, and you're gonna be like, "He's terrible. He's worse. He's trash." How's a human being trash because they had a bad game? How's a person trash? How does a coach deserve to be fired, but you can't be fired? You have bad days on your job. You have bad days when you preach the word. You have bad days when you just try to live this thing called life. Here it is, though, that this person is trash. A whole human being is trash, deserving of being thrown in a wastebasket. That's what we doing now. That's right. We think we own the player. We think we're the owner. By the way, the fact that these players are playing for owners is crazy. It's interesting. They got rid of master bedroom and all that stuff. And even though I don't think that's necessary, but they got rid of that. But nobody said get rid of being the owner of a team, did they? Just like they own, by the way, you don't get that reference. They own basketball teams in prison too. They own football teams in prison as well, right? They own prisoners. You forget that, right? Like they're slaves by law. They own them, right? They give them more rights. At least make it appear that you get more rights. See, a lot of you don't even look at when they have these what do we call the meetings where the union sits down with the league and all that stuff. Whatever those meetings are, they sit down. When they sit down, both times both sides have to give up something, right? At least so you think. And you guys think the owner somehow is giving up more power than what the players. No, no, no. Both sides have to give up something. So that means that if the players had freedom in this and this, if they want another freedom, they got to give up a freedom to get that freedom. You guys recall LeBron James, he was trying to talk, and I'm not trying to talk smack about him. I usually try to defend him a lot more, but the truth is the truth. Like, y'all remember that the guy who was the GM for Philadelphia, I don't know if he was the GM for Houston at the time, but the guy who's the GM for Philadelphia, he spoke against what China was doing. And LeBron James told him that he needed to shut the F up. But this is saying LeBron that said we need to take a knee. Right? He's owned when it's okay. When it's okay for his brand, when it's okay for Nike, when it's okay for this, when it's okay for that, he'll go ahead and say what he's supposed to say. But when it's not okay for persons to go against stuff that makes everybody money, he'll come out and tell them to shut up. He doesn't really care either way. Right? Michael Jordan, the same person that now y'all want to say, well, yeah, he was part of the person that said we should listen to the players. He's the same person that would argue against the players and say that they shouldn't have rights. When he became an owner, he's the same person that told Scottie Pippen and all these persons, hey, you know what? You got a contract. I'm not going to fight for you to have a better contract. But it's easy for him to say because even if his contract's not as much as it should be, although he retired making like $30 million his last year, and then, or 26 million at least, but I think his last year was 30 million with the Bulls. And then basically, nobody made $30 million again for years, right? And now you're like, I can't believe these players are making 30 million. His making 30 million back then is like if somebody was making 200 million in 1 year nowadays. Nobody says anything. This is the same Michael Jordan. Forget his personal life and what he's doing to his children, right? Forget the fact that you give him all this leeway because he won, but you forget he was going into Vegas and he was gambling so much that it's alleged that the reason why he actually had to go away from the game for 2 years or a year and a half was because he was about to get caught up in a scandal and they didn't want to attach to the NBA. So they said, take a break and then come back when you're ready. Like we just forget this stuff. We forget how terrible he was to players. We forget that he punched Steve Kerr in the face. Right? We forget, we forget that like the players didn't even want to talk to him. They would work out with him out of fear that they would be left on the team, but they didn't even want to talk to them. They had to talk to Scottie Pippen or Bill Cartwright. Hmm. We forget. How quickly we forget. Right? And make him sound to be great when he might have been Jordan the Terrible. Right? Always on your perspective. Like Ivan the Great, Ivan the Great is Ivan the Terrible, Alexander the Terrible is Alexander the Great. But we forget. There's a spirit. This thing leads us. There's persons that make money off of this. And hey, make your money, do your thing. It's capitalism. Right? But I'm truth. Like this system is set up specifically for that. right? We gotta tell the truth. The system is set up specifically for that. A lot of us don't. A lot of us don't even think about those things properly. We don't even think about these things properly. It's a thing of watching these slaves. And like I said, there's way lower slaves. There's slaves that you don't even think about. There's a slave anyways, I think we made our point. Holy Spirit said, let's move on. All right. So now that we have that in place, the gymnasium spirit, here's some things about the gym that you might not know. Not only were they naked working out in there, not only did they worship Hercules and Nike, or Hercules and Hermes. Hercules or Heracles and Hermes, right? They're Greek names. Hercules and Nike are their Roman titles, right? So when you go into these things and you realize what's going on, you'll recognize who these persons were. Hercules is supposed to be strength. Hercules is supposed to look a certain way, not like Samson, because Samson for us is strong. But when the spirit came upon him, we don't have anything that says Samson had to be oiled up, greased up, have a six pack, always walking around with his muscles showing. We don't know. We have no reference to Samson having to be extremely big. It just says when the spirit came upon him, when it was time for him to defend his people, he had strength because of his vow to the Most High, right? For them, Hercules is somebody that they identify with, number one, because Hercules is supposed to be a man, a mortal, a slave to the so-called gods, the deities, the deists. But at the same time, he's also demi-deus or demigod. He's half man, half God. So although he is not like everybody else, he is like everybody else. Can you see some interesting things where it's easy to start mixing and coming together with things? See, he's not like everybody else, but he is. Right? We can identify with him. This is why in all these sports and stuff, they like to make sure you can identify with the story. Right? You can identify with the person. I forget, there used to be these two brothers that they used to pit against each other, and they were saying they were going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger was against somebody else, whoever that was. Not Ronnie Coleman, but there were these two brothers that were going against each other in bodybuilding. And one story was both of them really were rags to riches story, but they played them off where one person was this and the other person was the rags to riches. Kind of like even what they did with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier actually grew up, poor. Muhammad Ali grew up middle class. right? But they turned it into, and Muhammad Ali is guilty of that too. If we keep it about, he made sure that he told everybody that Joe Frazier basically was into buffoonery. He was a rocket raccoon, if you will. Right? He made the point to say that. So we just had this in our fight where, and so white persons said it in their mind, so-called white persons during that fight, it became, if Joe Frazier fights for us, and so-called black persons were supposed to say, Muhammad Ali, he fights for us. They see that division as constant and consistent when the reality is they're the same people. They're one and the same. And you would have thought that, they would have learned better. They respected each other and stuff. And Joe Frazier actually got the short end of that stick. Right, throughout the rest of his life and throughout the rest of Muhammad Ali's life, Muhammad Ali kept treating him like that, talking about him like that. Even in the Thriller in Manila, he grabbed. He a black man, blacker than black power. Right, I got a soft spot in my heart for him, but we got to tell real is real. Pulls out a gorilla and starts saying, "This is all you're gonna see all night." Pulls out a gorilla, right, and starts saying, "It'll be a thriller and a chiller and a killer when I get the gorilla in Manila." And he starts hitting this gorilla doll, and the gorilla doll is like rubber, so it keeps going back and forth. And he starts saying, "Come on, gorilla, this is Manila." And then he says, "Come on, gorilla, this is the thriller." What does that do to somebody? And persons are mad, talking about, now look, we should learn to forgive, true. But persons like, why wouldn't Joe Frazier be Muhammad Ali's friend? He shouldn't be his friend. But this is what gymnasium stuff does. Right, they'll put you against each other. I promise, we're going somewhere. Just roll with me. If you haven't caught it already, we're going somewhere. We're laying some stuff down for you because you might not know all the different things that are popping up when we get this mention of Sardis or Sardis and all the things that can happen in Balaam doctrine and how we can be there. And there are persons that think they are you and they're not, but a synagogue of Satan. And that's even about to come into play more than what you might realize because you don't know some of this background. So here's Sardis with this gymnasium spirit, and they're more concerned about how one looks, right? But also how fast are you? That's where Hermes comes in, right? Because if you're going to be a gladiator, you got to be fast and strong. So these slaves, right, are worshiping, right? Stockholm syndrome not takes into place. They're worshiping things like speed, how you look, how strong you are, and how fast you are. Persons look at them and buy them, trade them. I know you don't want to think about it like that, but they traded slaves. They used to have. I know we don't want to be honest about this, but when you have what do they call it? The combine? Is it right? The combine. We're gonna land where Holy Spirit takes us. Maybe we'll see. Right, but the combine, right? The combine is where you do what? You put out a bunch of young men. You have them dressed down basically to buck naked. Mm-hmm. Right? You measure their fats, right? You measure how much muscle they have. You see how much they can lift. You see how high they jump. You have them do IQ tests. Remember Cam Newton when he was coming in. This is a long, long time ago for some of you. But when Cam Newton was coming in, you remember there was that whole thing that happened where Cam Newton was doing the test and and stuff. He wrote up the test and he went to talk to the persons and they started asking him questions about his mother and whether his mother used to be a prostitute and stuff. What does that have to do with anything? That person said it was a big deal and everybody was like, oh, that's okay. And that's fine if they do that. Why is that okay? Because he's a piece of meat. Stuff like that still exists, by the way. You don't like thinking about it this way. But when you listen to some person talking about, and look, love who you love. I just hope that they follow the way, right? Love who you love. They should be part of the nation, but hey, some of y'all going to do what you do. Love who you love. That's not what I'm doing. But hear what I'm saying. Some of y'all do that even when you talk about all the persons you done dated. And somebody wants to tell you how much you should know. Or how people have to say to let you know that they are not racist. I got a bunch of black friends. And we don't like it when persons call us out. But we say, I have white friends. And I don't really think it's as bad as what persons make it. But, some persons do that for particular reasons. We know. That being said, when we talk about persons we've gone out with and we want to make sure everybody knows how not racist we are, this is how we talk about persons like their meat. We'll go, oh yeah, I've been with plenty of different persons. Really? Yeah. I've been with white, black, Hispanic, Asian. And you be right. And if you didn't know any better, we might as well say, yeah. I've ate a lot. I've ate beef, chicken, right, turkey, lamb. Right, we talk about we grade these persons like they're meat, but that's a whole thing of being in like a gymnasium type thing. I've had young, I've had old, I've had big, I've had small, I've had fat, I've had skinny, I've had person with a lisp. I've had somebody that's a freak. I've had a good girl. I've had a good boy. I've had good hair. Girl, you won't get with him. He need to have good hair. We talk about this thing. This is a Sardis thing going on. This is a Sardis thing going on. You hear what I'm saying? And we don't want to talk the truth about that. Like we still have this thing in the I done helped all types of persons. Poor, blah, blah. And I get it. I get what we're saying. I'm not saying it's as bad as what we think, but there is an undertone. There's a gymnasium type thing where we think that what you look like or your status or how strong you are, whatever it says or whatever. Like sometimes you have to recognize that, see, for us, strength comes from the Most High. Once again, I'm not saying we shouldn't make sure we take care of ourselves physically, right? What I'm saying though is that when you make the physical so much to where you start looking, see, it's gotten to the point, if we be honest, some of these young cats, young boys, right, are literally starting to vote. Those who vote, they're starting to vote for whoever looks better than the other. They're using eugenics. Because we've gotten so much into what something looks like that now a person's like, I won't even listen to you unless you look a certain way. So do not be somebody who's ever gone through anything that might cause you to have a scar, might cause, right? Do not be somebody that you're somewhere to where you don't look like a stereotypical, man who's supposed to be over all these other persons patriarchal in a patriarchal fashion. You're not going to get you're going to start getting to a place where you can't even be looked at, not just only in skin color, which is obviously a big part of stuff, but now they're like, oh yeah, this person, like they were saying, persons now are like tearing up. If you've noticed, even in the Democrat side, right? I know they want to act like this is just a Republican thing. They're joning on JD Vance all the time now, more and more about how he looks, talking about his eyes look a certain way, he looks evil, and he's fat, and blah blah. I'm like, dang, I thought y'all was supposed to know better than that. Two sides of the same bird, though, right? But you would think to yourself, I thought y'all was supposed to. Y'all was talking bad when they did that to you. Why is that okay now? It's okay now because you know it's all right now because we need this to win. We got to fight. We're fighting against Trump. It's okay to call him the orange man, blah blah, this and that, isn't it? Mm, I know we don't want to. It's okay to call him that. Why? It's okay to talk about his hair. Why? Well, he's trying to hide it. Okay. Brothers are wearing, shoot. We've had brothers wearing man units since the time of Steve Harvey. Y'all remember? It's okay now, right? To act like we didn't know that was a thing. It's okay to act like we didn't know that brothers was wearing toupees. Sean Connery finally showed you what his head was looking like, but his head looked like that when he was James Bond. How you doing, Jalen? Are we just gonna pretend that it didn't? We're gonna say it's okay now to do to others, right? Like we have this weird thing where we'll allow this stuff. We're so into looks that we don't even care about the inner parts, the inner man. What'd you say? I get you. Yeah, yeah, right. Like we're so into the gymnasium thing, what you look like, and then also the speed, right? Because of speed and quickness. So they worshipped Ishtar, they worshipped Hercules. They were right because Hercules. Anyways, that's a whole long thing for me to get into. We don't have time. But Hercules, basically, they worship Hercules, which mainly is for strength, but also because they saw themselves and maybe they could become deities as well. And then they worship Hermes. They also would pay a whole bunch of money to sleep with these slaves, right? Sometimes you even wanted to sleep with the slaves that you felt were going to get to become really powerful because if they make it, then you make it. Sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Where sometimes they would try to make sure they got with somebody that they knew was going to be a great gladiator, and maybe they'd be able to buy their freedom and live off of their gladiatorial status for the rest of their days. Why not get with him? I mean, there were female gladiators too, as well, but they were not just like today. They weren't really as popular. They didn't get paid as much. Really didn't get paid at all. Gladiators didn't get paid, but they got paid like slaves got paid. If you want to, chattel slaves got paid. They got paid similarly, I guess. Right? But still to this day, hey man, let me see what I can get in with. This is what this gladiator stuff, right? Now, gladiators, they were at the gymnasium. Now watch this. Now let's look at some things that were in the gymnasium, right? Now if you don't know, a gym, it started off as a public space for young men's physical and intellectual training. When they say that, once again, we know what time it is. They talk about this started off as a place for gladiators. It was slaves. That's who did this, right? It derived its name from gymnos. If you don't know what gymnos means, or short gym, short for gymnos, right? Gymnasium is even a compound word. But gymnos actually means naked. Hmm. Which is why when a person show up to the gym, have you noticed that even if they're wearing clothes, it's as if they're not wearing clothes? Uh-oh, I know. I know we're not supposed to talk like this. We're not supposed to tell the truth. When persons show up to the gym, you notice a lot of persons that show up to the gym is as if they might as well just be naked. The word gym or gymnos means naked. Oh my greatness. Ah, you won't leave here the same way. You really won't. Right? Gymnos means naked. That's right. That'd be skin tight. They're getting spandex, calling it yoga pants now and stuff. We're getting the whole outfit. You know, it ain't nothing but what they was wearing in the 70s and 80s. When you saw what was in the 80s, what was that movie when Jamie Lee Curtis had John Travolta was looking at her and stuff while she was doing that whole weird thing. Y'all remember she was doing that or whatever, and doing the pumps for the ground and everything, pumping up towards the air. It's the same. It's the same. They wear the same. It's just tighter now. I don't know how you can make it tighter. It's tighter now, and it's more revealing. And all you do is you just put, that dental floss in between, and you pull it up, and you start working out. But that's because the word gymnos, it means naked. So the reason why you go to this, and if you didn't get that reference, that's because if I didn't mention it earlier, maybe I did, maybe I did not. They worked out. Yeah, I think I did. They worked out at the gym naked. The gladiators were there naked. You fine, Sister Donna? Come on. You okay? Right? So they worked out naked. That's what gym means. So when you go to the gym, you go to the naked. Gymnos. That's what it is. If you didn't know, now you know. You see how some of this stuff. So when we go through the scripture and we sum this up towards the end, and we hit Revelation chapter 3, verses 1-6, keep these things in mind. Right. Then they have our children dressed in the same way. Come on, right? It used to be, by the way, when you went to gym class, right? Gym class, you had to wear the long. Well, actually, I don't know. We didn't have the short shorts like in the 80s and stuff. But in the 90s, we actually had some pretty decent. We could ask for longer shorts and stuff like that. But you notice now, like everything's tightened up. Right? See, this same kind of spirit is what will have persons on ABC. Even somebody who you would think would know better or think better, like a Michael Strahan, manly man, blah, blah. But we'll have a 7-year-old boy. Or was he 11 at the time? Right? There's a 7-year-old that did the same thing. Maybe this is an 11-year-old boy. All the same, still a little boy. Who they have come on their show and they dance with tight clothes on, acting like they're stripping. And they clap. And they act like we should be excited about the fact that this young boy got famous because his parents were bringing him or allowing him, and then they got into it. They started bringing him to gay clubs. I'm not talking about you just because you're gay. Hear what I'm saying, right? For those who are, hear what I'm about to say. They were bringing an 11-year-old boy. I feel like he was 7, but there are 2 different ones that I'm thinking of, so I could be thinking about the wrong one. They're bringing a little boy, regardless, to a club for gay men, having him dance scantily, dressed as a woman in tight clothes. And persons who swear that they live by the Bible are clapping for this and excited to be able to accept it. You don't think that type of mindset affects persons? You don't think that there's anything wrong with that? I might lose some persons when I speak like that, because how dare you, and how dare you tell what somebody's sexuality is? Babies shouldn't be dealing with sexuality at no 7 or 11 years old. This whole thing, they should tell you who they are sexually. They ain't gone through puberty yet. Little girl hasn't lost an egg yet. The little girl hasn't developed the eggs yet. Baby boy ain't had no wet dream, developed sperm like that yet. How dare you have them up there dancing in front of persons so other persons can get off on them? Because we know what time it is for them. They're going to that place looking for a sexual partner. Your child is not supposed to be looking for sexual partners. How are you trying to tell them to tell you what sex they are? They can't aim it. Yes, it's extremely shameful. But they try to make us feel bad about saying that we should train them to be male and female, right? And if free will is really free will, fine. When they are in a position to take care of themselves, then fine, we can have that conversation. Even though with us, the conversation's not going to go the way that you think that it should go. But regardless, fine. If that's what we're going to do, when they are established, fine, let's have a thing. But who is supposed to teach them? Why are they supposed to teach themselves? And really, why is teach themselves code for letting predators teach them? Yeah, this might get me in trouble today. It's okay. I got to tell the truth. I got to tell the truth. How is that allowed? How did we get to a place where we allow the predator to teach the prey? You know, it reminds me of teaching the slave master teaching the slave. And then now that slaves are coming back and saying, hey, we should have never been enslaved. Now saying, how dare you? We didn't tell you what you could be. We taught you to be something different. How does the predator get to teach the prey? I don't know for sure if this is real. How you doing, Brother Alex? I don't know if this is real or not, right? I haven't touched this. I kind of touched the Will Smith thing on Patreon. I was going to touch this one on Patreon. I might still touch it, but I'm trying to be very careful about both and how I proceed, right? Because I think I even went a little too far on the Will Smith thing. You should usually let stuff play out. That being said, right, and by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about and you haven't seen on Patreon, long story short, I said we got to be careful. The stuff that he's saying against Will doesn't necessarily look like Will even did anything. But once again, we'll let that stuff play out. That's between, you know, them and each other, them and Yah, them and the civil case that they have, right? So whatever is alleged, they'll deal with that. That being said, this whole Pastor Donnie McClurkin thing, I don't really know what to do with this, if I'll be honest. Not because I defend him or don't defend him. I'm being honest. I do not really know what to do with Pastor Donnie. I don't know if this would ever even reach his ears. I do not know what to do with Pastor Donnie. Because Pastor Donnie, you keep doing things that once again we shouldn't, because you're supposed to stay away from the very appearance of evil. I'm not going to go deep into it, like I said, because I still don't know what to do with it. It'll probably be a Patreon thing just to protect me, just in case I say something that's crazy. And by the way, Patreon family, we've been posting. You're getting some great stuff. Don't miss it. Right? We've been really in there. Like this year, we starting off well. We got to keep it strong, right? We got to keep strong, not just start strong. But we've been putting some stuff, so make sure you're checking it out. All right, we've been doing it for all platforms, even free stuff. There's been some. There's been a lot of stuff for Patreon, even a lot of stuff for SOC University. So people, so check it out when you get there. That being said, or when you get a chance. That being said, this Donald McClurkin thing is messing with me. I'm wrestling with it not because, first of all, I don't know if what he's accused of is right or not. It's kind of odd, some of the stuff that's going on, right? And I know persons, which is, I guess, a point we could look at to say there's some validity to it, as far as persons will say, how do you groom a 19-year-old? But you can groom just about anybody, right? So I don't really care how old somebody, you can, pastors do this all the time. If I be honest, there's a lot of pastors that do this all the time, to where they want you to be something, and they might have a 3-year plan for you, but their goal is to get you. Okay? But that being said, whatever it is, and they're trying to say, that doesn't make sense to them, whatever. I don't know. But my issue with him is, once again, the very appearance of evil, right? I need you to hear this. Like, we don't catch this a lot. Part of it's kind of what we talking about with Jamal Bryant and the whole dress issue with his wife and stuff earlier. And by the way, if you know who his wife is and his wife's background, there's some things that are going on there too that are iffy. That's why, persons are not just saying this randomly or just trying to slut shame her, right? She's done some things in times past, and persons know where she comes from, right? All the stuff persons have been putting out on social media and on dating shows and all this stuff for a long time. So, but that being said, it's the appearance of evil. Pastor Donnie, and this is no fault of his own, and he's talked about this in his testimony, to give him credit, through no fault of his own, he was essayed, or a word that starts with M but rhymes with celested, if you will, right? But long story short, like, he was messed with, and children that are messed with others. And if a child is messed with, one of the things that we actually mess up in as adults with them is that if they are messed with, one of the things we should look at is make sure that we check them out and keep them close to us at all time. Because if they've been messed with, they could do the same behavior. They have to unlearn. Like that's a very crucial thing. I know this is alleged. Hip hop fans go one way or the other with this, but we forget there's persons like Bambata, right? Bambata. We forget that there's a lot of stuff that out there about him, right? And persons who got in trouble and come to find out a lot of persons were getting touched by him and stuff like that in their first experience sexually, and they're still messed up. You can see them very jittery and stuff, but he's escaped, outside of rumorville. And someone could say, well, nobody ever took him to court, so how true could it be? But that doesn't mean much. Just because somebody, there's a lot of persons who have died and come to find out they were doing all types of stuff after the fact, right? So, but it's the very, or even persons who, I've had somebody ask me a long time ago, I didn't really know all about Dr. York, so I didn't feel comfortable talking about it until recently when I actually started studying. I've been doing research on Bombada and some other stuff, and not just because of the sexual allegations, but also because of who they're tied to. And really, it was because I was doing some research on Polite, if you know about Brother Polite, who has kind of risen and gone away because of his stuff that he was doing to underage, more so focused on underage girls. But Dr. York is attached to both of them. They both pretty much claim to be of him. Both have defended him and stuff like that. Both have gotten in trouble, or at least had their name out there because of doing things similar to what he got caught up in, right? And so even in that, and there's some of Dr. York's children who have come out and said, yeah, he did do these things. I'm telling you what I saw, right? So it's a if you know that somebody's into that or caught up in that or something like that, there's something in you that has to say, hey, I need to stay away to a certain degree, right? Like I can't be as involved with certain things, right? Because you can be guilty by association. And yes, there's somebody can say, well, the Most High might have led me by, but yeah, but the Bible tells us to make sure that we are flee, or we stay away from the very appearance of evil. If it appears to be evil, this is why I've told persons before, look, who knows if TD Jakes has done all these things or whatever. But you know what happened? He was around Diddy. He was around Michael Irvin when he was drugged out. He was making excuses for Emmitt Smith and things that he did that were wrong. He was making excuses and having Tyler Perry put his hands on him. He prayed over Pastor John Gray, right, and made sure John Gray fell out on the floor after Pastor John Gray got caught cheating on his wife. So you do enough stuff and you're around this appearance. After a while, now one of the persons you were around is doing wrong things, but you were letting it slide. And he was never inside the house. He was never at a party. He's there, right? There are persons who are trying to say, there's no paperwork. There's nothing been found. If something comes out like that, it would be public. We have no paperwork, nothing. The only thing that we have is some guy that recently is saying that he was basically groomed as, once again, well, he says as an older teenager, who was groomed and then whatever, and now is trying to get stuff. And that person, if you look at his history, he got some really crazy stuff and manipulative stuff and trying to make money off of stuff too, right? So he's not necessarily the most trustworthy person. That being said, it's hard to dismiss it. Why, TD? Because you kept around it. And if you knew the stuff was going on, as soon as you found out about it, you should have said, no, Tyler, that's wrong for you to be doing blah, blah. No, Diddy, that's wrong for you to be doing that. Hey, Michael, look, yes, you can get better, but look, you got to get off them drugs. I can't just accept your time and then we get to hang around all day. You got to get your life in order, right? I'm going to come out, I'm going to say something against what you're saying. I got to make sure there's some kind of delineation, some kind of separation. That's why I've told y'all before, if one of y'all get caught in some stuff, especially cheating, but any stuff or whatever, like if somebody, I gotta tell the truth, or if I find out that you're cheating, then that's like the most you're gonna get from me is gonna be like, you need to tell them, or you need to stop, mere minimum, but you need to tell them, because if I find out that you're continuing in this stuff, look, as a pastor, right, and even as somebody you come to for coaching or whatever, I do have a legal responsibility of what we talk about stays between us, but I have to start off the conversation by letting you know, hey, if there's cheating, if there's murder, if there's something crazy, if there's breaking the law, if there's certain things, whatever, somebody comes to, I gotta tell them, or I can't be around your wife. How crazy does that look? I'm around your wife, or I'm around your husband, and I know that you're doing whatever, and you still doing it, and I'm sitting up there being like, well, what we're talking about is private. No, I can't do that. We got standards, right? So there has to be some way of separating, because if not, yes, I can make, as I said earlier, I can make everybody in the community look terrible because I didn't stand up for righteousness' sake. There's some times where I got to put my foot down and say, enough is enough. Sometimes I got to say, right, I'll try to do it behind the scenes with you first. I'll try to give you that mercy. I'll try to give you that out of friendship, out of love for you, out of genuine love for you. I will do my best to be like, okay, we'll talk about, you get yourself in order. But if you can't get yourself in order, I need you to know that you probably gonna get put out there. Because I'm not gonna live with this lie in my brain all day. I don't do that. It's not right. It's not right. Really, it's not right for you. As much as you think it's not right for you. It's not love for you. I don't really love you if I let you do that. If I loved you, would I let you do that to yourself? And it's the same should be with me. If you love me, right? When you say, hey, out of love, I want to make sure, hey, Pastor Kofi, you hanging around some stuff. You don't you should be participating in that. Hey, Pastor Kofi, you might not know. Hey, there's somebody you hanging around like this person. I want to let you know what that's about. So that way, even if you're not gonna say something, blah blah, make sure you're ready to do some things. Make sure you got some stuff in order, because you can't be part of that. I had friends who were in the streets, and I would try to act like them, and they'd be like, "Man, look, this ain't for you. We can see you're gonna be doing something, blah blah. It might be music at the time. It might have been music, but music, or you can do this, or you speak well, or blah blah. Right? This ain't really for you, bro. Matter of fact, here you go. Like some of the stuff you're looking for here, just take it, bro. Like go, right? And I'm like, no, I want to be with you. No, 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 no. This ain't for you. They love me enough that even though that's what they do, they love me enough to be like, hey, this ain't even right. Even the person that knows, there's honor amongst like real thieves. There's honor amongst them. And I know somebody don't like me saying that. How you gonna say there's honor amongst thieves? There really is. Like there are thieves out there that are better towards you than some of the pastors. That's why some persons go to the streets before they go to the church. Right? But there got to be a separation. There's got to be delineation. I've told a story before. My uncle who has passed, not Uncle John, but another uncle that passed last year or the year before. Might have been the year before. So maybe we're talking 2024, somewhat recently. And he passed away. He asked my cousin, who's a pastor as well. I used to be under him. And he asked us one day, he said, tell me, he said, why is homosexuality wrong? And this is one of those things where we were kind of looking at each other because we know, but he was gay. But he was closeted gay. So everybody knew he was gay, but you never said it out loud. From when we were little children, he always lived with his friend. You know what I'm saying? From when we were, you know what I'm saying? Like we always, it was known, like you grew up kind of, you didn't know what was going on, but something weird was going on. Then you got old enough to be, without somebody having to tell you, oh, okay, he's whatever. But he asked us a question, and we're grown men now. He goes, tell me what's wrong with being gay? And we were like, or he said, why is homosexuality wrong? We're just sitting there looking at each other like, are we supposed? And then he just basically said, it's wrong because the Bible says it is. Even in what he was dealing with, he was willing to be able to be honest and straight up. It's wrong. Right? So if something's wrong, you stay away from the very appearance of it. I'm so glad that somebody who was going through that and living that lifestyle was willing to be like, yeah, that's not, rather than now what's happening is everybody says we need to bogart and say that it's something different. No. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If the word says be against it, be against it. If it's righteous, it's righteous. And when he tells me that means that he's telling me openly, all right, when I'm going to preach this then, right? He's basically like permitting me. He's basically saying, hey, I want you to know, as family, preach this thing. That's what he was saying. Preach the word. Stand on business. Stand on righteousness. I'm telling you, as somebody who's going through this, I know that this is not correct. That means that I need to deal with this. Pray for me, right? Do things like that, right? And I still hung out with them from time to time or whatever, right? But I'm just trying to tell you, right? He was making it a point to be like, stand on business. I'm so thankful that he did that. I don't know if he went to heaven or hell. That's between him and Yah. But I'm thankful that he was willing to basically say in his own way, hey, don't forgive my language, right? If you think this is a vulgar statement, but don't pussyfoot around, right? It's right or it's not. It's righteous or it's not. How you doing, Sister Deja? That's amazing. We literally just praying for you this rising, But it's right or not. That's what he was saying. Hey, look. I deal with this, but it doesn't mean you don't have a right to live, et cetera, et cetera. Be like Joshua, as for me and my house, right? And stand on it. All right. So this gymnasium thing, gym or gymnos, it means naked, right? Okay. And the exercises were performed nude. So everything that they did, any kind of exercise was supposed to be naked. Once again, persons would pay for their services and stuff too, right? And then it basically started getting into like dirt fields. So basically, at first, it wasn't like you think. It was just like kind of a big dirt field where they would come together. It was a gym, and they would close it off from others, and they would be able to exercise naked, right? Then they started having stuff like colonnades. So they started having more spaces and stuff. Then they started putting baths and libraries. A lot of you don't know. That is the place where they're working out naked. I want you to catch this. There's a place where you come in naked to show your body, sexual activity. You're a slave, right? You owned. Then all of a sudden they start saying, okay, well now you can have dirt, you can go from dirt fields to now having baths. So, tell me if this sounds familiar. Like y'all think this is something that's new. Baths, right? Something y'all don't have. Libraries, lecture halls, which actually does happen at gyms more than persons might think, especially like at the YMCA or something, serving as vital centers for military prep. So now the military comes there and works out naked to get ready, right? Or maybe they might have some of their armor on from time to time, depending on what their workout is. Social life. And by the way, there's a lot of stuff that happens sexually in the military, right? Former military. I'm not trying to get on anybody. Former military here. All right. Military prep, social life, and philosophical debate. So a lot of you don't know. Plato's Academy. This is where it starts getting interesting. Plato's Academy, right? Was at a gymnasium, or there was a gymnasium that was called Plato's Academy. Why is that something that's important to know? Because Plato, where you get something called Platonic, right? Plato is his name, Plato or Plato, but it's where you get Platonic or Platonic relationships. Now, what is it? Not, and I know some of you know the answer. So if you do know the answer, right, already off the bat, and you're 100% sure where I'm going because you've heard me say this before, right? But I want you guys to think: what is it that the world teaches you? What is it that society at large teaches you about platonic relationships? What does it mean to be in a platonic relationship as far as the world? Mm-hmm. What is a platonic relationship? Alexander the Great was raised by platonic disciples, and he was raised off of platonic relationships, to say the least. So platonic relationship, kind of sort of no strings attached, but that's more so what they call it, F buddies and stuff like that, right? I'm looking for, right? So yeah, so platonic relationship supposedly is supposed to be with friends, but we don't have sex. How you doing, Sister Monica? In other words, it's really supposed to be male. Nowadays, it's supposedly supposed to be male and female. But a lot of persons do not know, right, what Plato believed and why you actually say platonic relationships. Plato, right, who had a whole gym, right, gymnasium. Plato's belief was that I'm sorry to laugh at it. It's crazy. Plato's belief is namely that you. Plato's belief system is that basically marriage between a man and a woman is the worst of any kind of relationship you may have. Not just oh, you can be friends and be so. His mindset is that marriage, sexual relationship because of marriage between a husband and a wife is the worst type of relationship that ever existed. How you doing, Brother Keith? Hopefully you're feeling better. I sent you some stuff and some information too, so prayerfully you got it, right? So he believed that the worst relationship, and prayerfully you and your wife are feeling better, right? That the worst relationship, this is what he taught. The worst relationship was between a husband and wife sexually. He believed and taught that the worst relationship, sorry, was the worst. Did I say best? The worst relationship one could have was between a husband and a wife. What he thought the best relationship was between two males. I can't even say two men. He believed it was between two males. The oldest male should be around age 40, and the younger male, this is what he taught, not what we teach, but he taught. He believed that the young, and it should be between the age around age 40 or so, and a young male coming up around age, let's say to be nice, age 12 or so. That's what he taught. Matter of fact, a lot of you don't know. That's why you got to be careful about skin color too, because Spartans would be considered to be, swarthy, at least people of color. Spartans, a lot of you don't know that that's why they were married, and they had wives. They also would have, mentees, and they would be mentors. And the original mentors in the Greeks were supposed to be men who raised up little boys, and they would actually violate these little boys on a regular basis. And that would be a continued thing that was going on. Matter of fact, Julius Caesar got made fun of because he got caught having sex with another male. But it wasn't because it was another male. It was because Julius Caesar was the bottom and the other male was the top. If you know what those sayings mean. I think I got those right. I just learned what they meant a couple years ago. So I think I got that right. Right? But this is what they believe. So you got to realize that there's a reason why these cats were around naked. It's not necessarily for the women. The women can get some too, but they're not necessarily for the women. Why Europe has some of the lowest birth rates? Well, that, and because they've gotten away from having children, right? But that was something that was extremely important for them, and the Spartans used to do that too. The Spartans would be inbred and stuff. They inbred themselves out. They were busy being so homosexual and inbred that's why the Spartans don't exist. They don't tell you that, right? That's actually the reason why the Spartans went out. They became crazy because they were inbred and they were having so much homosexual activity that they didn't even like women anymore. Put the two together, you're not going to last that long. Strongest group of men to ever exist, Hercules, died off because of the gymnasium thing. Oh, it's serious, right? Matter of fact, you go over, and who do we call it? What's his name? Matter of fact, when you go to school still to this day to teach children, you still have to learn about his stuff. The one who was trying to find the private parts on eels and stuff. Freud, Sigmund Freud. If when you have a Freudian slip and you think of it as being sexual, it's because Freud, right? Same spirit, same influence. Freud said, "Oh yeah, children when they be crying, they act anal. That's why you guys, when somebody be acting a fool, you say they act anal. Man, why you being so like you might have to be from a certain age, because I don't know if they even say that anymore. Now they say pause. No diddy, right? But there used to be a time where you would say that as a thing. You say, why are you acting anal? Like this person's anal, right? And the reason you say that is because Freud taught that when your children are acting up when they're little, and the reason why they're crying, and the reason why they be around mom and all that all day, is because they actually want to have, especially the boys. This is what he taught, not what I teach. Sorry, this is gross. You might need to turn away from the screen for about a minute. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to turn away, and then I'm gonna go, no pun intended, we're gonna go in. Okay? All right. Okay. So Freud used to teach that basically your child was acting a fool and crying all around your leg and everything because the child actually wanted to have sex with their father. But since the father didn't want to have them, then maybe they want to have sex with their mother. But their mother doesn't want to, so they're basically always around her, and they're acting crazy, but they really want to be penetrated. And since you want to be penetrated, you're anal. No alleged, by the way. That's what he taught. And his teachings are still taught to this day. If you're going to watch children, right? If your child, somebody says, how does stuff happen where the child gets messed up? They went over to somebody who's supposed to be a daycare person. I thought that they loved children, blah, blah. If you go to the daycare center, guess what they have to be trained in? Even if they're doing it at their house, guess what they got to be trained in? You see, there's a spirit. This is why there's 7 spirits set up to the 7 assemblies, and there's a word for each assembly. And we need to make sure that we have an influence, right? Influence that is higher than the influence of the world. We have to be more influential. We have to allow the kingdom that's in us to be more influential than the worldly system. You can't talk about Sardis without talking about this stuff. You can't talk about the gym without knowing that this is why some of you, and look, some of you be looking for attention. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it don't, take it off. Some brothers and sisters be looking for attention when they go to the gym. But there's others who are actually literally trying to get their workout on, right? But look, what are you wearing? And you know why somebody's coming there? They're coming there to look at persons naked. No, I just come there to work out. There's a spirit that's there. Yeah, it's sick and disturbing. But that's what persons are living by. Right? Okay. So it was exercises were performed nude, all that stuff. That's Plato's Academy was one of them, one of the gyms. The Romans adopted these Greek institutions, right? They really appropriated, but we'll use what they said. They adopted these Greek institutions, integrating them into their larger multi-purpose bath complexes, right? The thermae, right? Expanding their scale, but often diminishing their intellectual focus, preserving the tradition of physical exercise and social gatherings. So they got rid of the fact that persons were going there and giving speeches and doing all this stuff, and that persons were giving all this stuff. They just said, hey, we'll just come here, we'll work out naked, and everybody can come together, basically everybody can come together, date, have sex, blah, 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 whatever. Right? That's basically what the gym has become, but it has all those lingering things there. So you'll see a lot of this stuff pop up. Now, once again, gymnos means naked. So they're looking, and what they would tell you is this is a reflection of the healthy human form. But no, you just want to look at somebody naked. If gym means naked, we go in there to what? Now, and once again, if you're talking about the belief system, okay, well, once again, let's not forget Ishtar, Aphrodite, Artemis. That spirit is there, so we know that's there. But then also, too, emasculation is part of that belief system as well. So men bending over, blah, blah, being sold, da, 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 right? But then also we got to talk about what? We got to talk about, once again, Hercules, just real quick. Hercules coming in there, you got to be big and you got to be strong. And if you do this, then you become like the gods. You become, right? You can become like a deus. You can become like Zeus. He is half man, half Zeus, just like Zeus is. And if you notice how Zeus is depicted, he's depicted more like the emasculated man, even though he's supposed to be as strong as Hercules. Right? But then you also have the other one, which is Hermes, fast, swift. We love a lot of that when we see that. All right. What it's supposed to do is supposed to get young men ready for warfare, and it's supposed to get holistic education and get the physical fitness. That's what it used to be. Right? Now, structurally, it has simple areas like an academy. Now, we're talking about now war times. They're fast forwarding some. Oh, academy, lyceum, okay, they're just saying certain places in Athens. Okay, and it would get into larger places, right, where you would have running tracks, changing rooms, all that stuff. Now, watch this. You would have there's a specific term I'm looking for here. I don't know if they have it on here. I might have to have you guys pause just for a second because I have it in my notes, but I only have it on this device. I thought I'd be able to find it again, but it looks like they don't have it in here. Yeah, I might have to. Okay, you guys freeze. You guys are gonna freeze just for a second. You guys, everybody, give me a second, please, if you don't mind. I knew I should have just made sure I printed this out. I didn't. Give me a second. I want to make sure that we get this direct because there's 3 specific things, or it might be on. Is it on another device? It might be on another device. I use so many of these devices. Okay, it might not be on this one. It might be over here. You guys might need to pause for a second. Excuse me. I know. I was just going through this. Oh, I know where it is. Never mind. I was right. It's over here. Give me a second, you guys. Just a few more seconds. I apologize. Hold on. I got it. I know where it is. It is in my notes. Okay. Give me a second as I get this together. I got to type this in over here, and that way we don't have to keep going back through this over and over and over again. Just look for all these. Let's see. Just looking for a couple of terms. And then one more. Sorry, you guys. We're almost there. I want to show you just a couple more things just to make sure that y'all are with me on some stuff. Because in this last piece, we're going to show a lot of y'all will be like, I didn't even know that was there. Yeah, okay, we'll just go with what we got. We'll just go with what we got because I'll be sitting here going through these notes all day. All right. So, last thing I wanted to add in, there's three more things. There's a fourth thing. I can't recall what it is, but we'll just go through three more things that I want to show you real quick. So, there's something called a caldarium, right? Caldarium, which would be Caldarium. So this is a hot room, or what you would call basically a sauna, hot room in a Roman bath. Right? It featured hot plunge pool and heated by an underfloor heating system called a hypocaust, excuse me. Um, and hypo just saying it's underneath, right? So hypocaust. It's creating a steamy sauna-like environment for cleansing and relaxation before moving to cooler rooms like the tepidarium and frigidarium, right? Modern spas also refer to calendariums as a warm, humid room with heated floors and benches serving a similar purpose for relaxation and circulation. But the way the person's going to sauna, right? You put towels over yourself now, but you would go in the sauna, you would be naked. So you would go to these spaces, you would get naked. It was supposed to be steam. It helped you to be able to sweat things out or whatever. And impurities were supposed to come out. They believed even like demons and stuff came out of you, things of that nature, right? So even what you're doing there, but once again, what's the goal when you're going to the gym? The gym is to what? To go there. It's a sexual activity, a place where everybody does stuff, and also to use it certain times, certain spaces. Make sure you talk about things, talk about what your beliefs are. Some of these things we talked about even with Plato, etc. Right? Okay. You have another place there called the Frigidarium, which we just mentioned is a place that you can go to. Now, this one was a cold room in a bathhouse, right? So this had like a cold plunge pool. So kind of like some of you, when you even, some of you do this when you go to the gym or you go to a certain spot, maybe you go to a hotel and you have like a pool and a sauna. And so you go into the sauna or even a whirlpool. So you go into the whirlpool first. You get in there and then you jump in the pool. Or some of you have been taught like you're supposed to do cold plunges, so you wake up and you try to take cold showers. Or even persons have like bought certain types of housing and land to where when they finish, they jump. They go outside, they literally jump into cold water every day. Or some of you do the ice plunge every day and stuff like that. You have persons that'll do like a year straight of just doing the ice plunge, et cetera, et cetera. That's from the idea of the Fidari, right? Where you're supposed to do these things. And it's a large cold bath, once again, used a lot for cooling after the hot calendarium and steam rooms as the final stage of bathing, often with snow, used to keep the water chilled. So usually you go somewhere where it's going to be a place where it snows. Or if you're in a place where it doesn't snow year round, then or it's not high enough to where you have snow year round, then you're able to wait until you have to wait until certain times of the year. Okay, so you even see persons now they do a freezing thing where they actually freeze you. They'll put you in like negative 0 degree temperatures real quick, and it's supposed to like come up and freeze you real quick. So you'll see all these different things that are going on, right? So now, all that being said, in Sardis, you hopefully have an idea of what this gymnasium was and is. Has a lot of similarities. Now, why is all that important? Before we get ready, and what's the Balaam stuff, and what's the synagogue of the Satan stuff, and what's this or that, right? That you might miss with this particular assembly. Well, as we get ready to go back into those verses, right? We're going to go back into Revelation chapter 3. I want you to also know that when somebody, yeah, cryotherapy, thank you, right? I want you to also know that when you look at what's going on there, as they, as you would go through these places, what they did at Sardis was they connected a synagogue to it. Did you catch that? So that means a place that was made, gymnos, to be naked, place made for slaves, a made place for sex, a made place for sexual activity, a place made for getting across really perverted things and stuff like that, a place where you were supposed to get across certain ideas, a place where a person could come and talk, a place where leadership would show up and rulership would show up and all these things or whatever. Then all these weird things, a place where you celebrated Ishtar, a place where you celebrated Hercules, a place where you celebrated Hermes. Now you attach a synagogue to it. Did you catch that? Now we attach what? Shalom J. All right. Now we attach what? A synagogue to it. How you doing till daybreak? And thank y'all for the love. Appreciate y'all. We've attached a synagogue to it. Why is that something that's crucial? A synagogue is supposed to be a place for worship. Right? Especially now that the temple basically is not around, not a stone left upon a stone. Then all we have is what? Right? A synagogue is supposed to be a place for worship. It's supposed to be a place, but guess what? Those who are not worshiping the Most High have attached the synagogue to the gym. The same place where persons come and they're naked, this and that. This is why you even see some stuff that Paul has to deal with, even though it's between a mother and a son, which is crazy. But he has to deal with some sexual activity in 1 Corinthians. These are Greek folk. This is a cultural thing. We don't catch this. So the synagogue has been attached to the gym. Or you can look at the gym has been attached to the synagogue, whichever way you want to go. They're attached. The thing that perverts our belief system is trying to be made one with it. And by the way, in gyms, you know there's going to be idols, right? In gyms, you know there's going to be sacrifices that are made. Before you go to war, even when they're using gyms for war tactics and stuff, before you go to war, you make sacrifice. Constantine did. He made a sacrifice when he said he saw a Tav in the sky. And so he sacrificed the bull. That's what he said. Right? So we know, right, that this stuff is being mixed and matched. You see how all this stuff can affect one city, and if the city is living like this, and right, and some of this stuff is that I'm mentioning is going to happen a few years after, right? Right. So some of this stuff has been happening. Some of this stuff is happening while they're dealing it, but we are getting a warning even about the things to come. Hey, be ready. All these things are about to take place. Now let's get back into Revelation 3, verse 1. Or actually, verse 1 we already went through, but we'll start there again. All right, Revelation chapter 3, verse 1. It says what? It says, and unto the messenger of the assembly of Sardis, right? These things saith he that hath 7 spirits of Elohim and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, right? And when I hear your name, what? That you live, but are really dead. Because of all these things we just talked about, right? So verse 2, be watchful. Be watchful. Readeth, heareth, keepeth. Watch it. Guard it. Be watchful. Be full of watch. Know that there's somebody who's ready to do all types of weird stuff to you. Outright mess you up. Get in your ear. Get in your face. Right? With all this weird stuff. And many of them not even know what they're. Be watchful. You got to know this for yourself. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. Wait a minute. And strengthen the things that remain that are ready to die. For I have not found thy works perfect before Elohim. Wait a minute. Strengthen the things that remain and are ready to die. There are some things that you need to make sure get stronger because you think you're alive, but are really dead. You think some of the things that you're doing are progressing, but they're not progressing. They're not going to last because your works are not perfect. You're so busy trying to perfect everybody else. What about your works? Your works are not perfect. You're so busy talking about you're going to go ahead and go to your synagogue, your place of worship, but if your place of worship is still connected to the gymnasium stuff, how can your works ever be perfect? Come on, somebody, right? This is Bible, right? Anybody have anything else in their Bible? Now I know somebody might say, "I've never heard some of the stuff you're talking about." Yeah, because I'm bringing light to things from a historical point of view that you might not have known. That being said, right, I'm giving you the background because you might not be aware. For many persons, when I hear them preach and teach about this, all I hear them say, and for lack of, it makes sense. They'll just say, "This is the church that was dead." But what are we talking about when, hey, they have a name that they think they're alive, but really they are dead? What's going on with the trade routes to where there's Balaam doctrine and the synagogue of the Satan, and now the synagogue of the Satan through trade routes and through guilds has now had something to where it started to affect things going on, right? Even to the point to where now the world is saying, hey, we're going to add a synagogue. We're going to add, the place where you come to study the law and to worship and to serve. We're going to come through there and we're going to change things up. It's really crazy when somebody's, one of the craziest things that I find in service that nobody really talks about that much. One of the craziest things I happen to find in service. When you go to a service, if you go to church service, many are going to go today and stuff like that. Many of you are getting ready to get off and go to your church service. How you doing? Auto, thanks for being part of the community. One of the craziest things I found is the American flag is in your church. Especially the American flag with the fringes on it. Because when you go to, if there's separation between church and state, why are you so busy trying to put the state up in your business? And how many persons had to die off under that American flag before you get the memo? How many times do you have to see Rothschild activity before you get the memo? How many times do you have to keep talking about voting as if you don't have a king? You say your church is connected to the king, right? Then why you got a big American flag up in there? I respect person service. I'm a former service member. Right? I'm a service member. Once a service member, always a service member. I appreciate the sacrifice. Don't get it twisted. What I'm saying, though, is we're supposed to be in the kingdom, but we bring so much stuff in there, we don't even think twice about seeing the American flag. We don't think twice about persons will stop. Some of y'all stop services, right? Or even during Sunday school and stuff, will stop services to make sure that everybody says the Pledge of Allegiance. The synagogue has been attached, or I'm sorry, the gym spirit, the Artemis spirit, the Hercules spirit has been attacked. So much so that now some of you are like, hey, I won't listen to my, now look, I'm working on myself too, right? I ain't talking trash just about you, I'm talking trash about me, right? I'm gonna get this down. That being said, right, and even when I'm dealing with some health issues that go back here, but that's okay. We're gonna get this down. We're gonna keep working, we're gonna keep fasting. One of the reasons I didn't want y'all to think I was just taking random crazy stuff, but I stepped off to the side because I don't want to be a bad example in case somebody try to use me as one. But this is black walnut wormwood complex, right? I'm trying to make sure that I'm taking care of parasites. I'm still in my cleansing phase. That's one of the reasons why my stuff has actually dropped down. It was tighter, and then as I've been doing the parasite doing some weird things, trying to come about, but they're gonna come about. I'm done with having years and years and years of having stuff living in me that shouldn't have no place in my body, right? So even if it hurts or whatever, I got to do what I got to do. That being said, right, I'm making sure we talk so much about the spirits possessing us. Yeah, even that stuff be possessing you too. That being said, right, and all this stuff that we're dealing with, and so we have to recognize and come back into a mindset and a thought process about how we're allowing a whole bunch of stuff to be attached to our places of worship. These persons believe in Hercules. Hercules is Jesus. You don't know that Jesus means half man, half Zeus. Hercules is a Jesus spirit. And you don't even know that because you're so busy talking about how you were raised and this and that. No, you're allowing him into your service. He's attached, right? This stuff is attached to your place of worship. We got to be careful. So be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. If you're not careful, this stuff that you think, the little bit that you got left, you thinking it's all that, it's going to come out. It's going to die. Why? For I have not found thy works perfect before Elohim. And before somebody says, we can't be perfect. Your Messiah says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48, be ye perfect, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven also is perfect. So our Father who art in heaven is perfect, and he lays down perfect law. When we come outside of that law, thanks to the sacrifice of his Son, we will be forgiven that we might repent to be able to continue to move ahead. But remember, the entrance to this gate is narrow. And if you want to keep doing all this wide variety of stuff that you can, fine, go ahead out there. That's the road that leads to destruction. But the gate to where we're going through, the door, Yahashua, the door of himself, who we're going through, he is narrow. There's only one way in. You can only come in one at a time, so to speak. You can't just bring 7,000 persons everybody can do. You got to be held accountable for you. How you doing, No Name? Thanks for being part of the community. Right? So remember, therefore, Revelation 3:3. Remember, therefore, bring back to your remembrance because of what we just went over. Remember, therefore, how thou hast received and heard, and hold fast and repent. By the way, this word "and" there would be "at" in its origins, which would mean, remember, therefore, bring back to your remembrance how thou hast received, which then led you towards being heard, or I'm sorry, led you towards hearing, which then led you towards holding fast, and then led you towards repentance. That's what it's saying, right? Now, what does that mean? So bring back to your remembrance. Bring back to your remembrance. Remember, we were dismembered. We were members. We were dismembered. Now something's happened, right? We remember something happened. Dismembered happened. Membership happened. Now all of a sudden, what happens? Right? We found it. Somebody put it back together. But now you're going through the process of going through your what they call it when you done had your surgery now and everything, but you got to go through the process of strengthening it again. Y'all know what I'm saying. Therapy, physical therapy. You got to go through your therapy, right? I was saying PT in my head, but that's physical training, physical therapy, right? So now you're going through. So remember, now that you go back into now that you're getting on track again, now that you're doing what you're supposed to do, remember how thou hast received, right? You received this. Now that you've received it, let it go towards you being able to have your ears opened up. You're receiving the word in a way that you haven't. You're receiving the word from the actual interpretation. It's not how I interpret it. Interpretation, that's not how interpretation works. Interpretation has to be how it was originally meant to be. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against what? Principalities, the origins of things. Remember, therefore, how thou hast received, and now that you've received it, use it towards Shema. Shema Yachad Sha'al. Sure. Kwam Yachad Sha'al. Kan. At Shema Yachad Sha'al. Listen. Not listen, excuse me. Hear. And hear towards what? Holding fast. Remember, hold fast. If something is faster than something else, it just means it separates quicker. Quick, by the way, meaning lively, right? So has more life to it. So these things. So if something is fast, if I hold fast, then it means that this word, when I hold on to it, it separates me at an accelerated speed from the world. You should see me separating from the world if I hold fast to it. So I hold fast to what? Hold fast to the word. Hold fast to this revelation, which is for those that readeth it, heareth it, and keepeth it. Right? So I hold fast to this scroll. I do not add or take away from it. Right? That's Revelation chapter 22, verse 13 through 15, right? Okay. If therefore, and then I must also repent. So watch this. Some of y'all think that I've got to repent to hold fast. I'm holding fast to his word because I need to repent. Somebody missed that. I received the word. That's helping me now. Now that I've received it, I'm learning the language, I'm learning the original, all that stuff. It helps me to hear it. That now hearing it has helped me to hold fast to it properly because I was holding on to something that wasn't even the word. Now I can hold to something that separates me from the world and even from what I used to believe and how I used to move and how I used to think and how I used to think I was growing. And now my holding fast to it allows me to repent, which every assembly is told at the end, repent. I know that works. Starts off with, says to repent, and then it says those who have ears to hear will hear. So I'm holding fast to this word because there's some stuff I need to repent from, beloved. I'm holding fast because I need to repent. If therefore, because of that, because of receiving, because of hearing, because of holding fast, because of repentance, if therefore thou should not watch, if you're not keeping this, if you're not paying attention, what does he say? I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know the hour I will come upon thee. That's interesting scripture right there. If you were to go to Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, you would discover that it says there that we might not know the date or the hour, but we know what needs to take place before Yehoshua can come back. Were you aware of that? Were you aware that that's in your word? That we might not know the date or the hour. That's a marital scripture, by the way. Talking about that when the son goes back to build the mansions, he's waiting for his father's permission. He has to build the mansion, an attachment to his father's house. But we do know what needs to happen before he comes back. Matthew 24, verse 14. This is the Messiah speaking. He's been asked about eschatology. What is going to be the sign of the last days? And he's in the middle of it. But he's make sure that he says this. He says, hey, in verse 13, those who can endure. He says, don't be like all these persons and saying because it's earthquakes and because there's wars and because people say they're Christ, that means that Christ is about to come back. He said, those persons who are teaching and preaching to you, they lying to you. He said, that's not true. He said, those things must happen. They are the beginning of sorrows, but that's not a sign that I'm coming back. Those things must happen. They are the beginning of sorrows. He said, that's just the beginning of sorrows. Earthquakes, they must happen. So you hear somebody was wiped out and you have one of our brethren come out here and talking to himself like, see, even Hebrew Israelites have been doing this recently, until you guys get this stuff together, the Most High, he sent me to tell you that until you stop doing this to his people, he's going to have another earthquake and another flood. Christ himself said, if somebody says that, they don't represent him. Oh yeah. It's tight, but it's right. I know what your boy said. I know what your girl said. I know what prophetess said. I know what this and that. I know what apostle said. I know what pastor said. I know what overseer said. I'm telling you, if they say that Christ said, that's not even relevant. And I don't mean relevant at all. It's not relevant as far as eschatology, as far as is it a sign the times was in. He said those things will happen. That's some person trying to tell you some nonsense. What he did say, though, is that you need to learn how to endure, Matthew 24:13, right? And the same that endureth, the same is the one that shall be saved. And right after he talks about being saved, now he deals with this in Matthew 24, verse 14. He then says, right after that, he comes by and he says, when we preach this particular, some of your Bibles say Godspell or gospel, right? But that's not original. And even if you look it up in the concordance, you'll see that it actually says evangelize. So it basically says, if we evangelize properly using the righteous word, the original word of Yah, once that scatters to all of the earth, it says then he's coming back. Which means that we have a responsibility in the end of the world, because Esau is the end of the world, but Israel is the beginning of everything else. So if you're part of the nation, you have a responsibility to colonize, if you will. I know you don't like that term, but you have a responsibility to colonize, to gentrify, or at least to make sure that the word is heard throughout the world. That's your responsibility. This word, this message is not going to be going to everybody. They try to, but whenever somebody starts speaking like this, we have to start offing persons like this. Whenever somebody is Oluwada Equiano, all of a sudden we have to disregard anything he says. We can listen to stuff he says about history, but when it comes to your story, we don't need to listen. Right? When it comes to Flavius Josephus, he writes about your story, but when it comes to his story, we'll listen to him. When it comes to your story, oh, he's just making stuff up about Solomon and Israel and stuff like that. They'll tell you that these persons don't exist in the Bible. Meanwhile, we literally have prophets' rings who have been dug up, who've even been dated back by their carbon dating. I don't even trust carbon dating like that for real, but by their dating system, they've literally dated these rings, right, of prophets whose names match exactly what the Bible says from the time period that it said. They literally have walls on places on walls. That famous wall that's in Berlin now, right? That is from King Nebuchadnezzar. They have Israelites mentioned on those walls. His name is mentioned on those walls too. His name is mentioned there, but they'll tell you Nebuchadnezzar's a made up character. No, we know Nebuchadnezzar's real. That's what we were talking about earlier. We're gonna talk about that a lot tomorrow evening. Join us tomorrow evening if you can make it. Please don't miss tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening gonna really show you some things about like they've been lying to you about. We have no historical evidence. What's no. We gonna lay it out for you. I'm gonna try. I can't. I'm not as much as person think I just got unlimited money. I don't have all the money in the world, but I'm gonna try my best to figure out a way in the evening to make sure you guys can see a bunch of pictures, regardless of what platform you're on. Right? And we're gonna save it for SOC University. It's gonna be one of them. Like it's gonna be in depth presentation. So I promise you, like we're gonna leave no doubt, and I don't know if I'll be able to give you every last link, but we're gonna give you enough breadcrumbs, and then you study for yourself, right? But it's crazy the amount of stuff that they'll try to tell you and I. Oh yeah, there's no evidence of it. No. There's plenty. There's plenty. Right? There's plenty. Okay. So you need to know this, right? So, but he's gonna come upon us, right? As if so we're supposed to give the word. Now back to Revelation chapter 3, verse 3. It says if we have not received this word, right? If we have not received revelation, if we have not then used it to hear what the Most High says, if we do not hold fast to it, and we do not repent, therefore, or because of that, we'll end up in a situation where we will not watch, or we will not guard. And since we do not guard this word or watch the word and watch over ourselves concerning the word, when Yehoshua comes back to many, he will be as a thief. And thou shalt not know the hour that he will come unto us. Right? Now, it's not saying we necessarily know the exact date or hour, but we should be seeing really quickly, if we be honest, we're not even close as we think. Right? We're not far from the kingdom of heaven, but we're starting to realize how many persons are starting to say, wait a minute, all this stuff about, the iconoclast stuff and changing the color and doing some different things and saying all this stuff. We're starting to come to a place where we realize, wait a minute, a lot of this stuff was lies. We're starting to realize a lot of this stuff was lies. And we're starting to go back through, and we're starting to go back through with a fine-tooth comb, because we weren't supposed to ever be able to do this, at least so certain powers thought. They thought they'd be the only ones to be able to withhold this knowledge from us. And now it's not that we learn knowledge to withhold it, we're learning knowledge to give it. We're getting closer. See, now we can actually start. See, persons have been telling you, look at the volcanoes erupt, right? And look at the evil of man. Man is going to be evil until the day he dies. He's going to get worse until the day that he dies, until there's glorified bodies given out. Man going to continue to get worse. But we're supposed to hold fast to something that separates us. And as we are separated, we're supposed to give a word that gives hope to those around the around the world, around the system. That's what I really mean. Most of you know it as a globe, right? But around the system. Thank you. Babe, it's 11:11. Thank you, Sister Manil. Right? So I come to thee as a thief. Or I'm sorry, Yehoshua will come to you as a thief because you're not aware of what you're supposed to be looking for. We might not know the exact day or hour, but we should have enough sense because we're doing what we're supposed to, keeping the word, watching, praying, watch as well as pray. Right? Watching, praying, petitioning the Most High, seeking, being together, making sure we're not focusing on things that take us away from making sure we have our senses about us. We should have enough sense in us to know, oh, okay, this is that we're getting closer here. This is what this is. So we might not know the day nor the hour, but persons who don't know there's persons who have no thought process whatsoever. There's persons that are still talking about when the universe is going to fold in on itself. Right? Talking about, man, we got to get stuff together on Earth because, a million years from now, Earth is going to be taken over by the sun. And so we got to be ready to go to other planets and stuff. Do you not know you are in the last days? Then you do not. Because this does not even register. Well, the Babylonian spirit, you can say, affects the 7 assemblies for sure, right? We're going to get into that even a little bit coming up soon when we get to Revelation 4, definitely when we get to Revelation 12. All right, so now watch this. Revelation chapter 3, verse 4, just 3 more verses left. Thank you for hanging in there. Sundays I know are longer. Just hang in there. Just listen to me. Just give me a second. Here, Shema, right, we're almost finished. Just give me a little bit, right? Revelation 3, 4, thou hast a few names, even in Sardis, where they've connected gymnasium stuff to the belief system. Even in Sardis, to where they're looking around at persons being naked. Even in Sardis, to where persons are enslaved and making big money off of it. Even in Sardis, not that far from Pergamos. Even in Sardis, where Ishtar is lifted up. Even in Sardis, where y'all want to become netchers and deities and you really become Elohims like they do in Mormonism and stuff like that. Even in Sardis, there are names that have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in bright and brilliant, for they are worthy. For those of you that are in a Sardis position, those of you who are coming out, those who have a Sardis family, right? Those of you who have a family that's dealing with the spiritual influence, Yahweh still sees you. And he wants you to know that he still has a robe ready for you. And he wants you to know that he's watching your works. And he's letting you know, he's encouraging you. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep going. Keep pushing. I know it seems like it's wild. It seems like you're the only one. It seems like your family is trying to fight you and stuff. I mean, they're there, but they're not there. Blah, blah. I know your babies don't seem to get it yet. I know your mama don't get it. I know your grandmama don't get it. I know your daddy don't get it. Whatever. But I'm here to tell you, he says he sees you. He knows your works. Don't let anybody tell you that what he says is not righteous. You've seen him barak you. He's going to keep doing it. Verse 5. He that overcometh. He that what? He that overcometh. He that what? He that overcometh. You're going to have to woman up, man up, perish up. Right? You're going to have to, it's time. The time is before us now. It's not the same old, same old. It's time. All this training is for you right now. It is the last days. Nation up. Oh, you know what? I like shoot. I like that. Nation up. We might be able to do something with that. Right? It's time. We're in the last days. It's time to overcome. And by the way, overcoming is not as big a deal as you think. Don't play yourself, because you are more than overcomers. Right? You are more than overcomers. John said to his disciples, John said to his children in the spirit, he said, my little children, he said, remember that you have already overcome. Oh, come on, somebody, right? You are more than overcomers. You have already overcome. For those who overcome, for those who are already overcoming, do you not realize you have a 100% survival rate? I thought that they were going to do this to me. I thought they were going to take my marriage. I thought they were going to take my children. I thought they were going to take my job. I thought they were going to take my house. I thought I was going to lose my mind. But you've been overcoming. Do you not realize who you are? Why are you waiting to overcome? Forgetting that you have overcome. Why are you talking about, I hope I make it through this, when you have made it through everything? Why are you talking about this going to be the situation to take you out? Why are you talking about this is the time you won't be patient? Why are you talking about this is the time that I won't have any funds? Why are you talking about this is the time that this is not the day that the Lord has made? Every day that you've been alive, you have been thriving. It is you who have listened to the world, maybe, who have decided that you can't. But my brother, my sister, look, for those who are going to do this and keep this word, you will overcome. You'll continue to overcome. Yeah, we forget that sometimes, Brother Alex, but it's not because you haven't overcome. So let me just be here. I'm sitting by the Most High today to just give a reminder. You have already overcome. How many bills that you couldn't pay somehow got paid? And if they didn't get paid, somehow, some way, you were able to get the same thing, even if you had to be in another place. And you thought it was terrible that he would have to move you, but he moved you to be able to help you to continue to what? To overcome. How many of you thought you were going to be able to pass that grade or pass that exam or whatever it is, but somehow, some way, you sitting here with that degree, you have already overcome. How many of you are sitting there talking about, I don't know how I'm going to be able to make sure that I get food on my table, but somehow, some way, we sitting up here trying to lose weight. You have already overcome. How many of you were told that because you got in that accident or because you did this or whatever, that you would never be able to walk, talk, whatever again, but somehow, some way, here you are still. You have already overcome. How many of you have gone into the doctor's office and the doctor said, I don't think you're going to make it for 10 more years, and somehow, some way, here you are 40 years still kicking. You have already overcome. Matter of fact, some of you were sitting there because you're like, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. Do you know there's somebody else that looks at you man, I know that they talking about 20 years ago they used to be able to physically do this, but you know what? They're an amazing person to me because they got that situation going on with their health, and I don't think I'd be able to live through it. Here they are not only living through it, but they're thriving, they're preaching, they're writing, they're teaching, they're walking, they're moving, they're walking in the spirit, which a lot of times some of you who can't walk in the flesh, right, are teaching others how to walk in the spirit. You've already overcome. Come on, somebody. I've already overcome. They don't even want me to preach in a church. I thought that was going to be the end of me because nobody would want me to preach the truth. I had to come outside of the world because the church was in the world, and I had to come in and make sure that I started preaching and teaching correctly. And all I did was preach truth. And somehow, some way, come to find out there's a whole bunch of persons that touch and agree. We've already overcome. We've already overcome. Person be sitting there, man, I don't want to go through this because you know they're going to do, yeah, they've been doing that. They've already been doing that. If I tell the truth, I might as well just live in a lie. Why would you live in a lie? Because ultimately, the overcoming that you're really looking for is this is just practicing. Because guess what? You're going to overcome to a place to where you overcome death itself and overcome hell itself. Matter of fact, death and hell were already put in their place when Yehoshua took your place. Come on, Holy Spirit. I'm about to knock stuff over. It's already been handled. You've already overcome. Hold on to this word. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in this bright raiment. And watch this. And I will not blot out his name. Wait a minute. I will not blot out his name out of the scroll or the book of life. But I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. I know we're running out of time. But if I may, matter of fact, I'll just mention it. We're running out of time. We'll be faithful to 11:30. Right? We're running out of time. But if I might just put this before you. Revelation chapter 20, verse 11 through 15 tells you that everybody will be judged, and hopefully you won't have to experience the second death. It tells you about the order and the structure of how to be judged. And it also tells you specifically that John is confused because he sees persons standing before the throne, and he sees that there's persons who are going to be called up from the earth, from the grave, from the waters, from watery graves, even from hell itself. And they shall be judged. But he's confused because he sees well, we don't know how many. He sees a set of scrolls and angels, and then he sees a scroll as if it's the scroll of life, or what we call the book of life. He sees that there's these angels with this scroll, and they're going like this, and then there's this other book. And so the angel that's with him, the messenger that's supposed to give him this message, is with him, and he says, "Oh, let me tell you what that is." He says, "This is the scrolls. This is the word. This is Savah. This is Terach or Torah." He says, "This is what the word says," and they're looking to see through the word if you had the right works. It's not that faith doesn't matter. Is that faith and works go together. So if your faith is proper, then your works will be proper. Correct? So he says they're checking to see if your faith matches up with your works. Doesn't mean that you get everything perfect because Christ, and that's okay because Christ is there to make sure that our imperfections are covered. But they're going to look to see where your heart was at. They're going to look to see where your mind was at. They're going to look to see where your soul was at, so to speak. They're going to look to see where your strength was. They're going to look to see what you really believed, what you really had faith in, because they're just going to look in the scrolls. And if they see that your name, that your works show that you followed the scrolls to the best of your ability, then we should see your name in the book of life. But if they look and they don't see your works matched, your name cannot appear in the book of life. Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 through 15. So watch this. Now back to Revelation chapter 3, verse 5. That's right. The books, right, is the record of works and faith. And also it's literally in the scrolls. We're looking at the scrolls. So like they'll look to see, did you do what Genesis said? Did you do what Exodus said? Did you do what Leviticus said? Did you do what Numbers said? Did you do what Deuteronomy said? Did you do what Joshua said? Did you do what Judges said? Did you do what Ruth said? Right? This is what they're going to do. Did you do what 1 Samuel said, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, fast forward, sure. Did you do what Malachi said? Did you do what 1 Maccabees, 2 Maccabees, 1 Esdras, 2 Esdras? Right? Did you look at Ecclesiasticus? Did you look at Tobit? Did you look at Jasher? Jasher's mentioned in First or in Samuel in the Chronicles. Did you look at? That's what they're going to do. Did you look at what Matthew, Mark, Luke, John said? Did you look at Acts? Did you look? They're gonna do that. You're going to be judged to see if your works match what's in there. Come on, somebody. You're going to be judged to see if your works match what's in there. That's where they headed. We gotta see if you say you had faith. Okay, cool. Well, what do your works look like? And if your works match what you say your faith is, your name is in the book of life. Now back to Revelation chapter 3, verse 5. He that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in bright raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life. See, that's why I'm telling you, these 7 assemblies, there's so much richness and depth as far as making sure we can reveal properly and what is being revealed unto us. Because if we get what it's saying, right, then we recognize that the rest of what's going to go in Revelation really is dealing with making sure Revelation 1, we know whose revelation it is and what the standard is and what the chain of command is. Revelation 2 and 3, what these 7 assemblies are dealing with is what we're still dealing with as assemblies all over the world. But now we're coming back, and so we got to deal with this, or else we're going to come back with the same weird spirit and not give out the word properly again and end up going into chattel slavery or something crazier again. All right? This is what our family's been dealing with. Read your Bible, it'll barak. Right? Read your Bible, it'll bless you, so to speak. Read your Bible, it'll barak. So Revelation 3, verse 5, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in bright raiment, and I will not blot out his name for the book of life, but I will confess. That means I will have the same logic as him, right? And I will become a witness. I will have the same logic of him, therefore witnessing. I will confess. I will have the same logic, and therefore witness. I will have the same logic, and then for as a witness that his name, or witness his name before my Father, his authority. And if you get this reference too, it just told us in the assembly of Pergamos that we would have a bright stone, bright raiment, bright stone, right? Brilliant raiment, brilliant stone, with what? With a name on it that nobody would be able to comprehend but us. Now here the same type of thing. We now have Ayan, right? Ayan, right? Countenance, vision, different, authority, and that witness will be brought before Abba, Father, and before his messengers, before his angels. Verse 6. You said, so what about people who receive Christ before dying? That's between them and Christ. If they truly have received Christ, remember there's that whole thing about the parable about there's a parable about the master, and he's getting ready to, and he pays persons who come earlier in the day, and they agree to a certain wage, and then he agrees to hire persons later in the afternoon, and then he still needs more laborers in the evening. And then later on, it's time to pay everybody. So he begins to pay. He starts with the persons who started first. They get the payment. The persons who started first, they get a payment. Second group starts with them. They get a payment. Third group who started latest, they get a payment. And the persons in the beginning get upset because the persons in the second and third group have gotten the same amount of pay that they did. And they're like, why are you upset? And he says, well, it's mine to give. We had an agreement. We had a covenant. I told you exactly what I was going to pay you. But it doesn't mean that I won't give somebody else who's coming in and who's willing to do the works. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve to get the same pay. Same as the kingdom of heaven, right? We can't. Moses' generation doesn't get to say they're upset with Yehoshaphat's generation. Yehoshaphat's generation doesn't get to say they're upset with the Revelator's generation. John the Revelator's generation doesn't get to say they're upset with our generation, right? Because we're going to be in the same place, following the same Yah, when all of us were technically created before the foundations of the world. Right? So we'll let the Most High be the judge and let him pay what he pays. That's the context, right? Oh, okay. I get a little confused at first. All right, so Revelation chapter 3, verse 6. He that hath an ear, he or she, by the way, that hath an ear, let them hear what Ravach Hakodash, Asar, Adeschem. Asar, right? Ravach Hakodash, Asar. She speaks. Yechad She'al. Shema. We should hear. Right? Are you ready to hear? Are you hearing? Now, once again, we're told that if you want this to be barak for you, this series, this word, revelation itself, is for those that readeth it, heareth it, and keepeth it. So my shalach at Yechad my shalach at at sorry at Radachat Shamayam Anai shalach at Yechad at my shapachi. Um my prayer for you is that you be able to take this word and you readeth it, you heareth it. That's important. But if you got into the place where you heareth it, keep it, guard it, watch over it. Do not allow persons to come from all these different places. Do not allow different belief systems to penetrate this. Do not allow different persons who are not even of our family. So this is a family thing. They're not even of our family, but we letting them in and acting like they have every right to tell us what the word says when they don't even know the first thing about it. It's not for everybody. It's for you. Aman? Aman again. All right. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you so very much for being on with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're excited about this word. We're going to continue tomorrow. We have early rise of Bible study session tomorrow as well. So that's 6:30 a.m. New York time. And then we'll have our live session where we get into the Assembly of Philadelphia. And then in the evening, we'll have our live session and we'll have our project management meeting in the evening as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a couple days off, relatively speaking. But I'll be taking a couple days off, at least from the live sessions. But thank you all. If you're just watching this for the first time, or you're joining us, or you're just learning about us, or just learning about these things or whatever, feel free to go ahead and check out what we're doing. We do have recordings you can check out. And by the way, thank you for everybody for being on all the platforms today. Whether you're joining us from earlier from the podcast, IG, Clapper, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We're thankful and grateful to all of you guys, and hopefully you guys are staying well and keeping faith. And we're going to keep walking strong, and continuing to be strong in this walk and in this faith. Thank you for everybody who's been praying for us. Don't forget, Passover is coming up. So whether you're joining us or some of us are meeting up in different places and all that, that's great, by the way. But if you're coming over to Eastern Tennessee, and you're going to be joining us, we need to make sure that we know what's going on. We have received a little bit from different persons. We know for sure who's certain persons who are coming and who aren't. But we want, and so just make sure if you haven't had a chance to fill out that form, let us know how many persons are coming. We're asking for $250 per family, and bare minimum if you want to give more towards donations for certain things, feel free. But $250 per family donation. We're looking at having the rooms that are filled up in the particular house that we have. We have a whole lot of rooms in one big place, and so we're looking for us to come together in that. And of course, it's going to be virtual as well. And we're looking at trying as much as we can to get persons to come together. So by the way, if you're in a location and you think you'd be willing to host some persons, or a place where you guys can meet up, now you have to be prepared for it to be in the evening. Passover is going to probably be celebrated around, I'd say we'll probably start like about somewhere 7:30ish, 8ish, somewhere around there. I don't know for sure, but somewhere around that time, 8 p.m. New York time. So, 7 p.m. at the latest, because where we'll be, we have to do it at least around 6. So at the latest, at the earliest. So where we'll be 6 p.m. will be 7 p.m. New York time. So it's going to be no earlier than 7 p.m. New York time. So if you're going to join, if you're coming with us, if you're doing whatever, or if you even it's first come first serve for that particular location. Anything else, if you're coming, we're going to have to make sure that we get you, whether you're going to partner with somebody. I know some of you have done that before, to where you've gotten an Airbnb or hotel with somebody else, or persons have traveled together, et cetera, flew in together, whatever the case might be. We just need to know in advance if there is somebody, even if it's a maybe, so we can start kind of planning it out and being like, all right, we might have extra to help somebody, or, we might have so much of the stuff taken care of, where we're in a position where we say, okay, you know what, you can come on, or whatever. But we have to make sure that we have certain things in place, especially as far as food, right, place to stay, if we decide to do anything extra, and that as well. We'll also do something special for the first day of Feast of Unleavened Bread. So for the first day of Feast of Unleavened Bread, that'll be April the 2nd. We'll probably wake up and do something pretty special. Maybe we'll get up early and have a recipe or something made the night before or something, and we'll eat together really early or something like that for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, just to have something for you guys to take with you. But and then also, I'm not sure. I think it'll probably be that Saturday. Somebody had to check me on my dates here off the top of my head. I don't remember when. If like April 4th or so, somewhere around there, is going to be the April 4th or something like that is going to be Feast of probably somewhere, whatever that Saturday is, Saturday, Sunday-ish, we're gonna go from Feast of Unleavened Bread to the replica of the Noah's Ark. So if you'd like to join us for that, feel free. But we got a lot of different things happening on our calendar. We've had a lot of persons inviting us to different places. We're possibly even looking at doing some international stuff. We got to figure out how to do it, but we're looking at maybe even trying to see if there's some persons that want to possibly go over to, go across the pond for real. More than likely shooting for, either West Africa or Central Africa. So we got a lot of different things going on. Brothers are already meeting up in a particular place. Looks like we're sewing up stuff for us to do why do I always forget this word? Revival. And different things that are going on. So we got a lot moving. A lot of persons we're partnering with. We have persons of other languages, like, we have persons who speak French who are going to have to step up and stuff like that, and who speak Spanish, because we're starting to meet up with persons who only speak in that language, but they want to make sure they do their services in their language, but they want to make sure that they're linking up with us. We have persons, in Pakistan where we're doing the same thing. So when we say we be the nation this year, like just in these 10 days, really some of this stuff has been in the works, so we just don't talk about it as much. But some of this stuff has been going on for a while. So, it's breaking, it's moving, it's shaking, right? Which also means, when you guys know, whenever we say this hashtag we be this or hashtag da da da, we're going to be challenged. The devil's going to try to see, okay, you say you're the nation, right? If you say who you are, who you say you are, turn these stones into bread, right? So we're going to be ready for that. We're going to be ready for that challenge. We meet it head on, and we make sure that we praise Yahweh already in advance for the fact that we are more than overcomers, right? So thank you all for being on again. Love you all, Yahweh, Yahweh. And we're thankful and grateful to have you on one more again. You guys be safe. Do what you can to stay safe. Know that you are loved. I'm sorry, excuse me. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. You are loved, but we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, to the ministerial staff, moderators, SOC, Lottie Dottie, everybody, those who do stuff in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, whoever you might be, wherever you might be. We're thankful and grateful for another opportunity to roll with you one more again. So, love you much. Hope that I see you as soon as I can. I'm going to enjoy Family Day and everything. If I don't get back to you right away, just know it's because I spend time with my family. We will do our shout out. If you don't know how the shout out works, join us on TikTok, or just, stay on TikTok if you're already on there. We're going to go ahead and do the shout out. We're going to get ready to go ahead about our business for the day. Tadach Maisha once again, or Toda Mishkapa. Thank you, family, for being on. Very much so appreciate you. We honor you this day. That being said, this is Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until the next time I see you again, remember that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it.